Warrior Lore. Chapter 2475. Immediately, Bai Xing called out a rather large number of spirit stones. I want it. That cultivator actually didn't even think about it and nodded. All right, can the fellow Taoists in the front row negotiate? Bai Xing asked as usual. If no one wants it, then it's this fellow Taoists. The entire space was quiet, and no one made a sound. All right, this storage pouch is fellow Taoists. Bai Xing pointed, and the storage pouch flew in front of the cultivator. The cultivator opened it and smiled. It's the real deal. Good. Immediately, that cultivator also took out a small storage pouch and threw it to Bai Xing. Bai Xing respectfully received it and smiled. Thank you, fellow Taoist. With this cultivator taking the lead, two other cultivators in the front row picked up the storage pouches of two sections. When no one in the front row spoke, it was the turn of the cultivators behind. Obviously, the cultivators behind were very interested in chi refinement techniques. There were actually 3 cultivators bidding for a storage pouch of the white sect, which set off a small climax. After the chi refining cultivation methods were auctioned off, it was time for the foundation building cultivation methods. The number of storage bags containing foundation building cultivation methods was obviously a lot less. Xiao Hua had no interest in foundation building cultivation methods and chi refining cultivation methods, so he could only sit and watch. The foundation establishment techniques were all taken by the senior cultivators, and the cultivators behind didn't get anything at all. However, they were still looking forward to it, as if there were even better things behind. After that, there weren't any golden core techniques as expected, but flying swords and sword slips for sword cultivators. These sword domain items set off a climax, and many cultivators in the back row competed to increase the price. Xiao Hua looked at the quality of these flying swords and sword slips. Most of them were pregnant swords, and only 30% of them were bright swords. It was far from what he had, so it was even more boring. After these flying swords and sword slips, Bai Xing actually took out 10 flying swords used by illusory swordsmen. Unfortunately, they were all taken by the cultivators in the front row. Not to mention Xiao Hua, even the cultivators near the front row didn't have time to speak. This is a bit strange. The secret auction had been lively for 2 hours. Although Xiao Hua didn't get anything, he already had a faint feeling that something was wrong. This was completely different from what he thought. Sure enough, the next bid made Xiao Hua flabbergasted. Bai Xing took 3 storage bags from a disciple and said with a smile, "These 3 storage bags contain the tokens, magic weapons, and corpses of the 13 disciples of the strange beast sect of the Ripple Nation. May I ask, which fellow cultivator needs them?" Ah! Xiao Hua almost cried out in shock. His previous bad feeling had indeed become reality, and it was such a cruel reality. The corpses of cultivators who died in battle could actually still be auctioned here. Obviously, Xiao Hua's unusual behavior alarmed some people. Not only did the few cultivators beside him look over, even Bai Xing raised his head and glanced at Xiao Hua before smiling apologetically. Fellow Taoists in the back row, please wait a moment. Fellow Taoists will only have the qualifications to bid after the fellow Taoists in the front row have chosen. Humph, Xiao Hua snorted, but he was unable to vent the anger in his heart. A desolate feeling floated out from his heart. It was to the extent that a thick, killing intent flashed in his bewildered eyes. He really didn't want these cultivators to desecrate the corpses of cultivators who died in battle, even if they weren't disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect. Bai Xing's voice sounded in his ears again. These corpses of the strange beast sect's disciples were collected by some fellow Taoists from the battlefield. However, they weren't disciples of the strange beast sect, so they didn't have any obligation to return these things to the strange beast sect. Moreover, they didn't need any battle achievements. Therefore, if any fellow Taoist is from the strange beast sect or has some relationship with the strange beast sect, please make a bid. First, use spirit stones as a reward for collecting these corpses, and second, let the corpses of these disciples return to their homeland. All right, I won't say any more. The 3 storage bags are bid separately. If someone wants to take all 3 storage bags, then that fellow Taoist has priority. Immediately afterward, Bai Xing listed out 3 exorbitant spirit stones. You make it sound so nice and dignified. Isn't it just for spirit stones? Xiao Hua listened for a moment, and the anger in his heart somewhat dissipated. What Bai Xing said was also somewhat reasonable. Not all the corpses of disciples that died on the battlefield could be brought back by their fellow disciples. There were some people that were willing to collect these scattered corpses for the sake of spirit stones. This could be considered as some benefits, but in reality, it was still for the sake of spirit stones. Disregarding everything else, just the number of spirit stones Bai Xing called out made the corner of Xiao Hua's mouth twitch slightly. That was simply robbery. Are there fellow Taoists from the strange beast sect here? Bai Xing looked for a moment and saw that no one was bidding. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Even these magic tools, no one wants them? Still, no one agreed. Obviously, there were no disciples of the strange beast sect among these cultivators. Forget it, Bai Xing clapped his hands and casually threw the 3 storage bags on the round table. Wait, Xiao Hua stood up and called out. Oh, fellow Taoist. Bai Xing's face flashed with joy. He waved his hand again, and the 3 storage bags fell into his hand. He smiled and said, fellow Taoist's patience is really extraordinary. I almost thought that no one was bidding. This old man isn't bidding. This old man wants to ask. Xiao Hua's hoarse voice sounded. How do we deal with these corpses of the strange beast sect? How do we deal with them? What does fellow Taoist mean? Bai Xing was a little confused. Isn't fellow Taoist bidding? What this old man means is, if no one bids for these corpses in the end, how do we deal with them? Xiao Hua suppressed his anger and asked. Oh, so that's what fellow Taoist meant. Bai Xing casually threw the storage bags on the ground again and said, if it's the magic tools, this Bai and the others can send them to the auction or the trade fair. But the tokens and corpses, we have no other choice but to burn it. Why can't we send them back to the strange beast sect, or let them pay less spirit stones? Xiao Hua thought that although burning them was better than leaving them in the berserk corpse snowfield, he still didn't give up and asked, fellow Taoist, you must be joking. Bai Xing's lips curled into a smile. This Bai and the others spent spirit stones to collect these corpses. Moreover, this Bai and the others also have to pay for running this auction. Fellow Taoist, you don't think that this Bai is doing this here, and the city guards of Sky Patrol City or the higher-ups of Sky Patrol City don't know about it, right? All of this costs spirit stones. Besides, if this Bai gives these corpses to the strange beast sect, how can they give this by spirit stones? Let's assume that they will give spirit stones for the time being. Then the one who will give these corpses to the strange beast sect won't be this Bai, right? The smile on Bai Xing's face was inexplicable. Even if they want to give this by spirit stones, fellow Taoist, how many spirit stones do you want for each corpse? Just the amount that fellow Taoist Bai mentioned just now won't do? Xiao Hua was a little puzzled. Why don't fellow Taoist Bai just take a little reward? Wouldn't that be perfect? Cultivator. Don't ask if you don't understand. A cultivator next to Xiao Hua said coldly, don't waste this old man's time for nothing. Bai Xing chuckled and didn't explain anymore. He clapped his hand again and took out another 4 storage bags. He said with a smile, these are the corpses of the disciples of Chun Fangu of the Ming Kingdom, but they are not magic treasures. There are only tokens and corpses. This Bai has 4 bags. One has 10, the other 2 have 23 and 45. Which fellow Taoist wants them? What does this mean? Xiao Hua was even more puzzled. At this time, seeing that there were no cultivators in the front row bidding, the cultivator who scolded Xiao Hua just now raised his hand and said, this old man wants the storage bags of the 23 cultivators. Okay. Bai Xing waved his hand, and the storage bags flew to the cultivator's hand. The cultivator also took a look and didn't take out any storage bags. Xiao Hua understood that the 23 cultivators' corpses didn't have as many spirit stones as the cultivator paid, so there was no need to take out any more spirit stones. Does anyone want the items in the other 2 bags? Bai Xing asked. However, at the same time, he waved his hands and coldly threw the 2 storage bags on the round platform, as if he knew that no one would ask again. Sure enough, no one said anything. The whole place was very quiet. Even the sound of the 50 or so Chen Fan Valley disciples' corpses falling on the high platform could be faintly heard. No, Xiaohua was a little restless. Even if I don't want any tokens or magic treasures, these corpses, I can't let them blaspheme them like this. They simply don't take us, the disciples who fought a bloody battle, seriously. When he thought of this, a strange feeling arose in his heart. If that cultivator was a disciple of Chunfan Valley, why did he only want 23 corpses? Then why didn't he want the remaining 45 corpses? Could it be that he doesn't have enough spirit stones? If that's the case, even if I have to take out some spirit stones, I'll still help him. But how am I supposed to ask for it? All right, next up is the heavenly profound sex disciple. There are only 2 storage bags. One of them has 12 corpses, and the other has 37 corpses. Bai Xing asked the disciple to take out another 2 storage bags. Before Bai Xing could finish speaking, a cultivator who was slightly closer to Xiao Hua raised his hand and said, "Fellow Taoist Bai, this old man wants the 37 storage bags." Oh. Bai Xing raised his eyebrows and a smile appeared on his face. "Fellow Taoist, you're quite straightforward. In that case, this old man will not let you down. Fellow Taoist, please don't worry. I won't let you suffer a loss in terms of spirit stones." Hee. This old man naturally believes in fellow Taoist Bai, the cultivator replied with a chuckle. All right. Wait. 2 voices sounded at the same time. One was naturally Bai Xing's, and the other was a cultivator who was slightly more interesting than Bai Xing. Oh? A trace of joy flashed across Bai Xing's eyes. He pointed his finger and said, "Could it be that this fellow Taoist wants to make a bid?" -8. Chapter 2476. That's right. This old man is going to bid. That cultivator stood up and reported a number. This is unexpected. The cultivator from before looked at the cultivator in front of him and seemed to be thinking about something. However, when he saw Bai Xing's encouraging gaze, he calmly reported a number as well. However, to Xiao Hua's surprise, the bidding didn't last long and only lasted for 3 rounds. The cultivator who made the final bid smiled and said, "Forget it. This old man won't bid anymore. Give me the 12 storage pouches." Hee. Thank you, senior brother. The cultivator who made the first bid cupped his hands and took the storage pouch. The cultivator who made the next bid took the other storage pouch. Senior brother? Xiao Hua somewhat understood. I reckon these 2 cultivators are disciples of the Qin Fan Valley. In the next hour, Bai Xing took out the corpses of many disciples from various sections. There were truly too many to count. The smallest amount was a storage pouch with a few corpses, while the largest amount was a storage pouch with 100 corpses. Other than the corpses of a few sects disciples that no one wanted, all the other corpses had cultivators bidding. It was rare to see a disciple of the Qin Fan Valley bidding. All right, next are the corpses of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples. Bai Xing smiled and clapped his hands. A disciple brought up 4 storage pouches. There are 10, 21, 35, and 52 inside. I wonder which fellow Taoist is going to bid? This old man wants them. How could Xiao Hua let the corpses of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples fall into the hands of others? He raised his hand and said, "This old man wants all 4 storage pouches?" What? Fellow Taoist wants all of them. Bai Xing was stunned. He pointed his finger and said, These are the corpses of more than 100 cultivators. This merit. Fellow Taoist, don't you think this is too great? What? Merit? Xiao Hua was stunned. This sentence was like a spark that ignited him. A surge of hot blood suddenly rushed to his brain. His entire body was trembling, and goosebumps covered his skin. They actually took the corpses of my Imperial Thunder Sect. No, all the cultivators who died in battle on the battlefield as their own merit. They actually used these corpses as a trade. This is their merit, Xiao Hua roared in his heart. Xiao Hua, who was scheming, shrewd, and experienced, actually didn't expect that there would be such a group of people in Sky Patrol City after the battle. They were using the corpses of cultivators to earn spirit stones. There were also some shameless cultivators who used dirty spirit stones to exchange for these noble corpses and then used these corpses to exchange for fake merit. Fellow Taoist, fellow Taoist, Bai Xing said in a low voice, have you made up your mind? The battle merits of these 100 corpses are simply too great. Fellow Taoist, I'm afraid you won't be able to explain this to your sect, right? If the sect pursues this matter, we won't be able to handle it. Killing intent flashed through Xiao Hua's eyes once again, and his hands trembled slightly. He was confident that if he were to make a move himself, the several tins of gold core cultivators in this space would definitely not be his match. Furthermore, since they were doing such a dirty deal here, they definitely wouldn't dare to expose their whereabouts, and they definitely wouldn't be discovered by others. Fellow Taoist, have you made up your mind? Bai Xing didn't expect that he was lingering in front of the gates of hell. He urged, there are still some corpses behind, and other fellow Taoists are also waiting. Sigh, a trace of understanding flashed through Xiao Hua's mind, and he thought of the darkness when he walked out of the Imperial Thunder sect. In this world, there is only light and darkness always comes after light. Without light and darkness, there would be no Dawn Rain continent. Forget it, even if this young master kills all the cultivators here today, this kind of trade will definitely not be severed in the future. Although they are doing these dirty deals, the corpses of the cultivators who died in battle can still return to their respective sects. At the very least, their corpses will be burned to ashes in Sky Patrol City. Fellow Taoist, are you going to bid? The few cultivators beside him also urged. Hee, this old man doesn't want it for now. Xiao Hua, who had finally understood, immediately sat down. How could he possibly spend his spirit stones on such a dirty transaction? What? Bai Xing was stunned again. Then, he rolled his eyes and said with a smile, it doesn't matter. These corpses are in my hands. If this fellow Taoist has other ideas, feel free to tell me. Then, he threw 4 storage bags on the high platform and took out other storage bags. After another hour, the bidding for the corpses of the cultivators was over. Bai Xing kept the storage bags that were not bid on and took out dozens of storage bags. He said with a smile, the following storage bags are naturally filled with the corpses of sword cultivators. They are placed according to the cultivation level of the pregnant sword and the number of sword cultivators. I won't say more about the details, everyone. Please bid. The corpses of sword cultivators were different from the corpses of disciples of various sections. Every cultivator could ask for credit, but every cultivator had to bid according to their cultivation level and the swordsmen they encountered in battle. Therefore, once these storage bags were placed on the high platform, it immediately attracted the bidding of many cultivators. Listening to the sound of bidding, Bai Xing's face was full of smiles. He felt that every sound was a shiny spirit stone. Looking at the extremely lively scene in front of him, Xiao Hua seemed to have nothing to do with it. He just looked at this farce of fighting for credit with a mocking expression. The intensity of the bidding was really no less than the bloody storm on the battlefield. Perhaps, when the elders in the conference hall saw this young master reveal so many corpses that day, they also felt some disdain in their hearts, right? Xiao Hua secretly mocked. Compared to them, this young master's battle achievements are much less. Or perhaps, this young master also wants to get some corpses of swordsmen. Anyway, this young master doesn't care about credit. It's better to exchange them for spirit stones. Xiao Hua's thoughts were also somewhat active. But then, Xiao Hua's heart trembled, and he secretly said, damn it, this young master still wanted to kill these cultivators just now. Why do they seem to be wallowing in the mire now? Then isn't this young master the same as them? Isn't this adding fuel to the fire? Alas, the temptation in this world is really too great. This sword cultivator's corpse was bid for more than half an hour before it fell to the ground. Even the cultivators in the front row also participated in the bidding. It was clear how popular this sword cultivator's corpse was with these cultivators. All right. When all the cultivators were satisfied and sat down, Bai Xing clapped his hands with a red face and said with a smile, thank you for your support, fellow Taoists. Below are some slightly more valuable items. This Bai has also placed them in his storage bag. Please bid. As he spoke, several disciples brought over a dozen storage bags and placed them in front of Bai Xing. They cupped their hands at the crowd and left. What are these? Xiao Hua secretly thought, if these aren't corpses, this young master will bid. These are the flying boats used by various sections. Of course, some are damaged. However, in this Bai's opinion, it doesn't matter whether they are damaged or not. As long as you bring them back to your sex, they will all be. Haha, good. Bai Xing immediately called out the names of the flying boats and the required number of spirit stones. Of course, these flying boats were the same as the corpses of the disciples of various sections. If they didn't belong to their sex, it would be useless for them to take them. They would inevitably suffer the same fate as Xiao Hua. However, the flying boats required a lot of spirit stones. It seemed that only a few cultivators in the front row were bidding. The cultivator in the front row doesn't seem to be bidding. Seeing the cultivators in the front row raising their hands to bid, Xiao Hua suddenly saw the cultivator who came in with him. He couldn't help but wake up. Could it be that he's the same as me? This isn't possible, right? Just as Xiao Hua was thinking, Bai Xing raised his hand and took out a storage pouch. Inside this storage pouch is the thunder-controlling sex thunderboat. I spent a lot of money to purchase it. Which fellow Taoist wants it? Although Bai Xing didn't say which fellow Taoist he was talking about, his gaze had already fallen on Xiao Hua. Everyone already understood that Xiao Hua was a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Of course, Xiao Hua had already clearly seen which sect the cultivators present were from. However, everyone understood that no one would be able to break the other's cover by shouting at each other. Oh, right. Apart from the cultivator who hadn't bid, no one knew his background. How many spirit stones? Xiao Hua raised his hand. The thunderboat of the Imperial Thunder sect didn't participate in the battle here. This old man doesn't know where it came from. Moreover, it's a bit damaged. If fellow Taoist wants to bid, you must think of a good reason. Bai Xing was indeed very considerate. He reminded Xiao Hua and said the number of spirit stones. So much. Xiao Hua was a bit dumbfounded. Fellow Taoist should be clear in his heart. Bai Xing looked as if he wasn't afraid that Xiao Hua wouldn't take the bait. The thunderboat of the Imperial Thunder sect has always been rare. Moreover, it can carry a lot of people. Even if this thunderboat is a bit damaged, I'm afraid the Imperial Thunder sect isn't willing to part with it. Forget it. Xiao Hua reached out and took out a storage pouch from his chest. He handed it over and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Bai, please take a look." Apart from what fellow Taoist paid earlier, these spirit stones are just right, Bai Xing said with a smile. After receiving the storage pouch from Bai Xing, Xiao Hua scanned it with his divine sense. There really was a thunderboat inside. However, the thunderboat was already damaged. Moreover, the damage seemed to be quite serious. Like I said, if it wasn't for the fact that it couldn't be used, if it wasn't seriously damaged, how could this little bit of spirit stones be exchanged for a thunderboat? Xiao Hua sneered. However, this guy doesn't know. Why would this young master use spirit stones to exchange for battle achievements? After receiving the thunderboat, Xiao Hua calmly sat down. The purpose of coming here had been accomplished. His spirit stones weren't wasted. As for the dry separation pill, to be honest, Xiao Hua didn't have any hope in his heart. -8. Chapter 2477. After a short while, Bai Xing clapped his hands and bowed as he said, "Thank you for your support, fellow Taoists. I've run out of things to offer, so if any of you have any other ideas, you can contact me in private." Xiao Hua knew that Bai Xing was talking to him, but he sat there calmly like a mountain. "Next, it's time for you to exchange what you have. As usual, the fellow Taoists in the front row will speak first, and they will have priority," Bai Xing said with a smile. "Of course, if you stay in the Sky Survey tea house for a long time, you will be able to get a tiger tally from the fellow Taoists in the front row in the future. Naturally, you will have priority." After saying that, Bai Xing raised his hand and smiled at the cultivator in the front row. "Fellow Taoist, you can take out what you want to bid or say what you want to bid for. If any fellow Taoist here or the Sky Survey tea house has it, we can provide it to you." "Okay." The cultivator stood up and said in a strange voice, "I came here to collect some things and also to ask for a rejuvenation pill. May I know which fellow Taoist has this item?" Bai Xing laughed before the cultivator beside him could answer. "Fellow Taoist, you have come to the right place. The Sky Survey tea house just happened to have a rejuvenation pill. May I know how much you are willing to pay? Ah, there's a rejuvenation pill here? Not only Xiao Hua, but the other cultivators were also shocked. Damn it. It seems like the Sky Survey tea house and the Sky Survey City's auction fair are colluding. Xiao Hua thought to himself. Immediately after, the cultivator sent a voice transmission to Bai Xing to negotiate. Bai Xing revealed a difficult expression as if she was trying to bargain. After a short while, the two of them finished negotiating. Just as Bai Xing was about to hand over the rejuvenation pill to the cultivator, a cultivator beside the cultivator stood up and angrily said, "Fellow Taoist Bai, since you have the rejuvenation pill, why didn't you take it out earlier? This way, we can also bid for it, and you can get more spirit stones. Even if I want to bid now, I don't have the chance." Hee, fellow Taoist, you should know that the rejuvenation pill is an item in the Sky Survey City's auction fair. I can't bid for it here. If fellow Taoist wants to bid for the rejuvenation pill, you can go to the auction. As for the item that my Heavenly Survey tea house wants to negotiate, I'm sure fellow Taoist knows about it. Bai Xing smiled apologetically and said, "Of course, if this fellow cultivator has a need and can make a request here, since the Sky Survey tea house can help, we will naturally help. Even if fellow Taoist brought it up first, I would still give it to fellow Taoist. However, this rejuvenation pill is very rare. I only have one. I'm very sorry." Sigh, all right. When the cultivator heard this, he knew that Bai Xing's words were reasonable. He could only sit down dejectedly, feeling very unwilling in his heart. "All right, fellow Taoist, please speak." Bai Xing handed the rejuvenation pill to the cultivator and respectfully said to the cultivator who came in with Xiao Hua, "Dao friend hasn't said anything yet," which made this Bai confused. Could it be that everything before didn't go to Dao friend's mind? The cultivator didn't stand, but instead said coldly, "I don't need these. I only came here to ask a question. If anyone can answer even half a sentence, I have spirit stones to pay." "Oh, if that's the case, then please say it. There are many fellow Taoists here. Maybe someone will know." Bai Xing wasn't surprised. "I want to ask, who knows if the person who assassinated Tu Hong was a swordsman or a cultivator? If it was a swordsman, which sword sect was he from? If it was a cultivator, which sect was he from?" The cultivator said indifferently. Hiss, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at that cultivator in confusion. Xiao Hua's heart suddenly jumped. Cough, cough. Bai Xing smiled bitterly and said, "Fellow Taoist, you must be joking. Wasn't Senior Tu Hong killed by Qin Jian, a sword cultivator? Who else could it be? Besides, how could it be a cultivator? Could it be a golden core cultivator from the conference hall?" The cultivator didn't seem to intend to answer his question. Instead, he looked around and said, "Which fellow Taoist knows? This old man has spirit stones to pay for it." As he said that, he slapped his hand and took out a storage pouch and threw it to Bai Xing. Bai Xing caught it and scanned it with his divine sense. His expression changed greatly. He looked at the cultivator and reported the number of spirit stones in the pouch. This time, even Xiao Hua's expression changed. Good heavens, so many spirit stones. This young master really wants to sell himself. "Fellow Taoist." A cultivator diagonally across from Xiao Hua stood up and said in a low voice, "I don't know if this person is a cultivator or a swordsman. However, it was a coincidence that day. I saw a person using a very strange concealment technique. All right, tell me in detail. Time, location, and possible direction of escape. As long as this old man is satisfied, I can give you a portion of the spirit stones." The cultivator nodded and answered, "There really isn't a wall that doesn't have a crack in the world." Xiao Hua's back was covered in cold sweat. He clearly saw that day that there weren't any cultivators nearby, and there wasn't any divine sense. However, this cultivator actually knew the place where he used his concealment technique. This was really something he didn't expect even in his dreams. Next, the cultivator transmitted his voice. Xiao Hua couldn't hear what they were saying. However, in the end, the cultivator really took out some spirit stones and handed them to the cultivator. It seemed that there was some clues. Who is this cultivator? Why did he come here to inquire about this young master's whereabouts? Xiaohua unconsciously stared at the cultivator a few more times. However, the cultivator's confusion blocked the cultivator's view. Xiaohua couldn't see anything clearly. Another cultivator stood up and raised his hand. That day, when Qinjian attacked Tu Hong, this Taoist was also nearby. I saw the situation clearly. I have been puzzled these past few days. After hearing what fellow Taoist said, I suddenly realized that an attack. Fellow Taoist, you can transmit your voice. The cultivator coldly reminded, as if he didn't want the surrounding cultivators to hear. Soon after, the two cultivators continued to transmit their voices. While Xiaohua's back was covered in cold sweat, he closed his eyes again and carefully thought about the situation that day. It seemed that he didn't miss anything. The sword formation he used was something he hadn't used before. The Dream Executioner used 64 sword rays, which was definitely a big deal. The most likely problem was the green and red sword rays. It seemed that some of the Tao sect's disciples had seen them before. However, Xiaohua's biggest advantage was that he wasn't even at the mid-stage of foundation establishment, so it was impossible for him to fall into the eyes of others. Sure enough, after the two transmitted their voices for a long time, the cultivator was silent for a moment. He pointed at his storage bag and tossed it to the cultivator who stood up. Fellow Taoist is right. In this old man's opinion, this old man is also puzzled. All right, if there aren't any more clues, these spirit stones are this fellow Taoist's. I still have some here. Hearing that the interrogation was about to end, several cultivators stood up. Fellow Taoists, transmit your voices separately, the cultivators said indifferently. But after an hour, when the cultivators finished transmitting their voices, the cultivator shook his head. Fellow Taoists, this old man won't say anything about some of them, but the other two fellow Taoists have already said it. Forgive this old man for not being able to give you the spirit stones. If there aren't any more fellow Taoists, this old man will give these spirit stones to this fellow Taoist. Clearly, among these cultivators, there were some who were passing themselves off as fish eyes. They were easily discovered by this cultivator. Since this cultivator had already vaguely pointed it out, the few greedy cultivators behind him who still wanted to get lucky gave up. No one said another word. All right, half of the spirit stones in this storage bag are fellow Taoists. The cultivator waved his hand, and the storage bag landed in the hand of the cultivator who had sent the voice transmission. The cultivator very familiarly took out half of the spirit stones in the storage bag and returned the remaining spirit stones to the cultivator who had sent the voice transmission. The price negotiation at the Sky Survey Tea House is really not bad. The cultivator took the storage bag and stood up. He shouted, Bai Xing, open the restriction. This old man is leaving. Fellow Taoist. Bai Xing smiled bitterly. It's not dawn yet. The prohibition of the Sky Survey City is still in effect. Haha. Since this old man can come, naturally, I can also leave. The cultivator only said one sentence and walked behind the crowd. Yes, this Bai understands. Bai Xing seemed to wipe the sweat on his head. He cupped his hands at the crowd and walked quickly to the front of the cultivator. He respectfully opened the restriction and sent him out. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Bai Xing returned and bowed to the crowd. This Bai is really sorry to have made all fellow Taoists wait for so long. Fellow Taoist Bai, who is that person? A cultivator couldn't help but ask. Bai Xing smiled apologetically. Forgive this Bai for not recognizing you. Fellow Taoist, who are you? The cultivator didn't say anything after hearing this question. Haha, Bai Xing laughed apologetically again. Those who come to my Sky Survey Tea House are all giving you face. I'm only in charge of negotiating prices and earning some hard-earned spirit stones. I don't know anything else. Please forgive me, fellow cultivators. Well, let's not talk nonsense. It's my turn. A cultivator in the front row stood up and said, This old man wants to find some primordial true wood. I wonder if any fellow Taoist has it? Or do you have information about it? Primordial true wood? Xiaohua curled his lips. Why don't you want primordial true water or primordial gold qi? I have them in my space. Xiao Hua had primordial gold mother and primordial jellyfish in his space. Not to mention primordial gold chi and primordial true water. Even primordial unity green light and primordial unity green light could be easily obtained. However, when these two primordial true would fell into Xiao Hua's space, it was a different scene. It was not as arrogant as it was on the Dawn Rain continent. Xiao Hua received the two items. He was very afraid of them, so he threw them far away at the edge of the space. He was afraid that these two items would have some strange properties. -8. Chapter 2478. However, to Xiao Hua's surprise, the two items seemed to have a faint connection at the edge of his space. Their brilliance intertwined with each other. Not only did the Tai green light and the Tai Wei green light increase, but the innate gold chi and the innate primordial water also increased greatly. These two items were also intertwined with each other as if they were one. Of course, the gold chi and the primordial water were also scattered throughout the space, but they were far less powerful than before. Haha, as far as I know, there seems to be this item somewhere in the Huan country. However, it's been too long and I can't remember it. The first cultivator who obtained the rejuvenation elixir said with a smile. Alas, I also vaguely know about this. The cultivator who needed the innate primordial wood side. It's just that I've been in the Sky Patrol City for a long time and haven't seen it in the auction, so I came here to try my luck. Obviously, this cultivator's luck was not as good as Xiao Hua's. After waiting for a while, no one spoke, so he could only sit down resentfully. When it was the turn of the last cultivator in the front row, the cultivator clapped his hands and took out a jade slip. He handed it to Bai Xing and said, "Fellow cultivator Bai, I need this item. I wonder if your Sky Patrol tea house has it?" "Well, since you've come prepared, I'll take a look first." Bai Xing took the jade slip and immersed his divine thought into it. Immediately, his face was filled with astonishment. However, this astonishment was immediately replaced by confusion. He raised his head and said embarrassedly, "Fellow cultivator, please wait a moment. The spiritual tea in your jade slip, I'm not familiar with it. I'll ask my junior brother to come and take a look." "Ha ha ha. Fellow cultivator Bai, this is not spiritual tea," the cultivator said with a laugh. "Oh, if this is not spiritual tea, then what is it?" Bai Xing was a little confused. "I've been running the Sky Patrol Tea House for decades, and the Sky Patrol Tea House has been operating for thousands of years. Of course, I can recognize this spiritual tea. Hee hee, all right. If the Sky Survey Tea House has this spirit tea, I will buy it with spirit stones." The cultivator nodded. Then, a cultivator who was older than Bai Xing flew up and cupped his hands at the crowd. He took the jade slip and looked at it for a moment. Then, he shook his head slightly and said, "This spiritual tea looks very familiar. However, when I look at it carefully, it is different from all the spiritual teas in my sect. I have never seen it before. My Sky Survey tea house doesn't have this tea either." At this point, the old man asked sincerely, "What is the name of this spirit tea? I am very curious." "Junior Marshal Brother," this fellow Taoist said, "this isn't spirit tea." Bai Xing explained, "Oh, it's not spirit tea." Disappointment appeared on the old man's face. He then cupped his hands and said, "Then I was blind. Fellow Taoist, there's no need to say the name of this item." After he finished speaking, the old man bowed and left. It seemed that if it wasn't the spirit tea, then it had nothing to do with him at all. "Can I show it to you, fellow Taoists?" Bai Xing asked tentatively. Of course, the cultivator nodded and said, "I want you to see if you have any information about this item, or if you have this item." Damn, this guy is looking for something similar to the spirit tea. That's why he came to the Sky Survey Tea House. Who would have thought that they don't even know about it? Xiao Hua sat at the back, watching everyone check one by one. Somewhat bored, "I want to find some dry distance pills, but obviously, these cultivators certainly don't have this thing, and even if they do, it won't be too much, and this young master has already been identified as a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, and today I have broken through the ban of the Sky Patrol City. If I ask for too many dry distance pills, it will definitely attract the attention of others, and if they follow the map, they might be able to find this young master. It seems. As he thought about it, The jade slip was passed to Xiao Hua. Seeing that everyone was silent, the cultivator had already given up on the idea. He was waiting for Xiao Hua to finish reading it and take it back. Unexpectedly, Xiao Hua took the jade slip and immersed his divine sense in it. After reading a bit, he was stunned on the spot. He was not only familiar with this item, but he was also very familiar with it. In his space, there was a large patch of spirit grass planted with this item. It was the fragrant spirit tea that Ziyi gave him. Isn't this the fragrant spirit tea? It's obviously the same. Why did this cultivator say that it's not the spirit tea? Xiao Hua was very puzzled and looked at it again and again. Seeing that Xiao Hua was holding the jade slip without moving, the cultivator was pleasantly surprised and whispered, "Fellow Taoist, do you have this item?" "Oh, I won't hide it from you. I do have a few pieces." Xiao Hua thought for a moment and smiled. Fellow Taoist really has it? How many pieces do you have?" The cultivator almost cried out in surprise. About 3 or 4 pieces." Xiao Hua said embarrassedly. This old man thought that this was the spirit tea. I have already drunk it twice. I thought that the last 3 or 4 pieces were too little, so I didn't drink it." You really used it to drink tea?" The cultivator almost cried out in surprise. Xiao Hua said curiously, "Isn't this the spirit tea? If this old man doesn't drink tea, what else can I do?" You are really wasting God's gift." The cultivator almost jumped up and said, Quickly give me those 4 pieces. No matter how many spirit stones you want, this old man will agree to it." Seeing the cultivator rushing over and stretching out his hand in front of him, Xiao Hua smiled. If he didn't knock now, when would he? Fellow Taoist. Xiao Hua transmitted his voice. "What is this item? You can't tell others, but you can't tell me?" The cultivator calmed down and said hesitantly, "This old man can tell you the origin of this item. However, you have to make a heart oath to give it to me." "No problem." Xiao Hua made a heart oath and said that he would give the 4 pieces of fragrant spirit tea to the cultivator. Only then did the cultivator feel relieved and said, "Actually, this item shouldn't be of any use to you. Leaving it in your hands can only be used as spirit tea." Fellow Taoist, just say it quickly." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "This old man has already promised to give it to you, and I promise that I will never ask for too much. Are you still not satisfied?" Oh, that's right. Only now did the cultivator realize that if Xiao Hua had listened to him and asked for a lot of spirit stones, he might not be able to afford it. Wouldn't he have fallen into Xiao Hua's trap? Alas, this old man is too surprised. The cultivator smiled apologetically. "Thank you for your kindness, fellow Taoist. This item is only effective for one of my soul-related secret arts. This old man has been looking for this item for dozens of years. Recently, I learned from some of my seniors that this item was found in the millions of Ming Mountains. Moreover, even in the hands of soul cultivators, this item is absolutely precious." Soul cultivator? Xiao Hua was shocked, and Ziye's elegant image appeared in his mind. No matter how he looked at him, he didn't look like a barbaric soul cultivator. Presumably, fellow Taoist also got this item from a sword cultivator. The cultivator said with a smile, "Only swordsmen and soul cultivators can get this rare item. Fellow Taoist, you don't need to know how this old man got this item. You just need to tell me its origin." Xiao Hua said absent-mindedly. Seeing that the two of them were talking through telepathy, the other cultivators naturally knew that this item was related to the cultivator's secret. They could only sit quietly and wait for the two to complete the transaction. When the cultivator finished his brief explanation, Xiao Hua understood. This item was called the Daybreak Moon, and it was an auxiliary item used by soul cultivators during their cultivation. It was similar to the spirit stones and medicinal pills used by cultivators, but this Daybreak Moon was even rarer. Oh, so that's how it is. Xiao Hua understood a little, and his heart was also enlightened. Zi might not be a soul cultivator. He might be like the others, mistaking this Daybreak Moon for spirit tea. Otherwise, how could he taste this extremely rare treasure in the eyes of soul cultivators in a tea house? Then, Xiao Hua asked the cultivator about the usage of the Daybreak Moon. The cultivator hesitated, only saying that it was related to his secret arts and didn't want to talk about it. Okay, Xiaohua nodded. Since fellow Taoist doesn't want to talk about it, then this old man won't force you. This old man will take these 4 spirit tea and won't exchange it for anything else. I just want to exchange it for the dry distance pills Dan recipe. I don't know if fellow Taoist has it. What? You. What do you want the dry distance pills Dan recipe for? The cultivator was surprised. You said before that you wouldn't make things difficult for this old man here. Xiaohua shrugged and said with a smile, this old man isn't really making things difficult for you. This is indeed this old man's original intention. Even if you don't tell me the origin of this thing, this old man will still ask you for it. How could this old man have the dry distance pills Dan recipe? The cultivator smiled bitterly. This old man isn't good at alchemy at all. Then we can only see if other fellow Taoists have it. Xiaohua spread his hands and said, okay. The cultivator was also helpless. When he was about to open his mouth, he shook his head. This fellow Taoist, these 4 twilight moons of yours are priceless treasures to this old man, but to others, they are simply worthless. As for the dry distance pills Dan recipe, I'm afraid it won't be that easy to obtain. This old man really doesn't have any certainty. I won't let you and I exchange spirit stones. How about fellow Taoist find the Dan recipe himself? Fellow Taoist, this old man's words are naturally reasonable. You can go and ask. No matter how many spirit stones, this old man will agree. Xiaohua only thought for a moment before transmitting his voice. Okay, this old man will give it a try. After all, this old man isn't an alchemist, so I don't know what the result will be. The cultivator heard that Xiaohua didn't want to take the initiative himself and only wanted him to help him bid. He was quite puzzled, but he could only pinch his nose and follow Xiaohua's instructions. The result could be considered as Xiaohua's expectations. There really were alchemists among these dozens of people. After the cultivator negotiated for a long time, paid a large sum of spirit stones, and also the secret of the twilight moons, the cultivator obtained a jade slip. This fellow Taoist. The cultivator gave the jade slip to Xiaohua, and then took the 4 verdant twilight moons from Xiaohua, and said with extreme helplessness, you're really making things difficult for I. In fact, fellow Taoist can use spirit stones to exchange for the Dan recipe. Why must you let I bid? -8. Chapter 2479. Xiaohua said via voice transmission, that fellow Taoist communicated with you via voice transmission. Although this poor Taoist couldn't hear it, according to this poor Taoist's thinking, they must have an additional condition, which is that they want to know the name and usage of this day-night moon. That's right. That cultivator was stunned, but he immediately realized fellow Taoist means, because he wants to know the name and use of this twilight moon, he made a deal with I? People are naturally curious. If they come across something they don't know, or even something that might be beneficial to their cultivation, they will inevitably do everything they can to know or obtain it. Fellow Taoist took out this mysterious thing. Although it's useless to him, he still wants to know. This in itself is a temptation. If I bid, he may not be willing, but if fellow Taoist bids, then he will definitely succeed. Fellow Taoist is right. That cultivator was clearly convinced by Xiaohua's words. He cupped his hands and said, this old man understands. Xiaohua watched that cultivator turn around and leave. He impatiently immersed his divine sense into the jade slip, carefully memorizing the pill formula he obtained with great difficulty, then threw it into the space. The spiritual herbs used to refine the dry separation pill couldn't be said to be rare and old, but in Xiaohua's eyes, these weren't difficult at all. They were simply at his fingertips. With this pill formula, he could use it as a reference. He could even refine the pill himself. He didn't need to bid at the auction, and he didn't need to attract the attention of others. It must be known that bidding for more than 10 dry separation pills at once was definitely a big deal for a large sect. Not to mention that Xiaohua might need several hundred pills. Xiaohua's purpose in coming to this bargaining session has been achieved, so he was very satisfied. He didn't care about the transactions of the other cultivators. Even if he had a lot of old spirit grasses in his space, he was too lazy to deal with them. As for the things that the other cultivators took out, they weren't particularly precious and had nothing to do with Xiaohua's cultivation. So be it. These sanctimonious things, this young master won't play with you anymore. Although Xiaohua wasn't arrogant enough to directly leave like that cultivator, he still closed his eyes and stopped paying attention to them. Another hour passed, and the sound of bargaining gradually died down. A cultivator in front of Xiaohua said in a low voice, "This old man originally didn't have anything to bid on, but if I don't take out something, I'll be letting down fellow Taoist by his hospitality. How about this? This old man has a sword slip that I obtained from a sword cultivator." The contents of the sword slip seem to be a map. As for where the map is, this old man doesn't know, but it definitely doesn't belong to the Cultivation Three Kingdoms. I wonder which fellow Taoist is interested? With that, the cultivator greedily took out a large number of spirit stones. Map? Xiaohua was slightly stunned. Could it be the ruins of the Buddhist sect? At this moment, Bai Xing chuckled and said, "Fellow Taoist, this map of yours, I'm afraid the number of spirit stones given is a little too high, right? How could anyone possibly make a bid?" Hee. The cultivator laughed and said, "This thing is useless in this old man's hands." Just like that fellow Taoist from before, he actually drank something that others regard as a treasure like spirit tea. In the eyes of others, this map is probably a rare treasure. If this old man doesn't take advantage of this moment to get more spirit stones, when will I? Even if no one bids, this old man won't lose anything, right? That's reasonable. Everyone had seen Xiaohua and that cultivator trade for the twilight moon, so they also knew that what this cultivator said was reasonable. "Fellow Taoist, you have to let us take a look, or else who knows where this map is?" A cultivator said with a smile. Wait a moment, this old man will add some restrictions. After that cultivator finished speaking, he cast a few spells and handed it over to Bai Xing. Bai Xing looked at it and smiled without saying anything. Then, she handed it over to the cultivators in the front row in front of the high platform. This seems to be a map of the vicinity of 1,000,000 Ming mountains. A cultivator was stunned at first, but then he smiled and said, "That, fellow Taoist, don't blame me for speaking without thinking." As that cultivator spoke, he clapped his hands and took out a sword slip. He smiled and handed it over to that cultivator and said, "Fellow Taoist, take a look. Is it similar to your map?" "Oh, is it? Ha ha ha. This old man is ignorant and inexperienced." That cultivator's tone was awkward at first, but then he laughed and said, "If that's the case, then there's no need to negotiate. This old man will embarrass himself." Ha ha ha. Everyone laughed. While putting away the sword slip, they looked at Xiaohua sitting at the back. They only had to wait for Xiaohua to complete the trade, and then they could end this negotiation. "Oh, this old man doesn't have anything I want. To be honest, this is the first time this old man has come to this kind of negotiation, so I'm not prepared." Xiaohua stood up and cupped his hands and said, "How about this? Fellow Taoists, you can trade the maps with this old man. This old man will take 20 spirit stones, 10 for each map." "Oh, is that so? Fellow Taoist is actually interested in this map? If that's the case, this old man also has one here." Bai Xing laughed when he saw this. He clapped his hands and took out a green sword slip from his storage bag. This old man spent 2 spirit stones to exchange for this from an Qi refinement disciple. If fellow Taoist likes it, this item is fellow Taoist's. Bai Xing didn't wait for the others to speak. He waved his hand and the sword slip flew over. He said with a smile, "This old man earned 8 spirit stones." "Oh, why?" Xiaohua was very puzzled. He thought that no matter what, he would have to bargain for a few rounds, but he didn't expect that Bai Xing would actually take out a map from her storage pouch and even give it to him so easily. Since Bai Xing had Bai Xing's interference and the price had already been finalized, the other 2 cultivators also knew that this item wasn't valuable. They might as well exchange it for a few spirit stones, especially the cultivator in front of Xiaohua. He clearly knew that Xiaohua had some ulterior motives, but the 2 of them had already given the map to Xiaohua, so his portion was almost useless. He also somewhat reluctantly gave the sword slip to Xiaohua. Haha. Xiaohua was very happy. He cupped his hands and said, "Many thanks, fellow Taoists." Many thanks, fellow Taoist Bai. You're welcome, you're welcome. If fellow Taoist doesn't have any requests, today's bargaining session will end. Bai Xing said with a smile. Yes, I don't have any requests. Xiao Hua nodded with a smile. As he spoke, he waved his hand and put the 3 jade slips into his space without even looking at them. Good. Bai Xing waved his hand and put all the storage bags on the high platform into his sleeve. He said with a smile, I announce the end of this bargaining session. Fellow Taoists, the sky is already bright. Fellow Taoists can leave now. If fellow Taoists want to drink tea in this humble tea house, please move upstairs. This humble tea house will serve tea for free. Haha, many thanks, fellow Taoist Bai. All the cultivators stood up, cupped their hands, and prepared to leave. But just as Xiao Hua stood up, he heard Bai Xing's voice transmission, Fellow Taoist, please wait a moment. Me? Xiao Hua was somewhat puzzled and looked at Bai Xing in confusion. Yes, fellow Taoist. Bai Xing said with a smile on his face. All right. Xiao Hua watched the cultivators leave one by one. Although he muttered in his heart, he wasn't nervous. Fellow Taoist, please sit. Bai Xing followed the crowd to Xiao Hua's side and said very politely, Well said. Xiao Hua sat down steadily and asked calmly, But I wonder why fellow Taoist Bai asked I to stay. Haha, it's nothing. Bai Xing looked up and saw that everyone had left through the restriction. He smiled and said, I just want to make a deal with fellow Taoist. A deal? Xiao Hua was slightly stunned and said curiously, I've already found what I need. What else does fellow Taoist Bai want to make a deal with I? Naturally, it's this. Bai Xing took out a storage bag and handed it to Xiao Hua with a smile. What is this? Xiao Hua didn't take it and asked instead. Bai Xing didn't withdraw his hand and said politely, Fellow Taoist, why don't you take a look for yourself? Xiao Hua's heart thumped. He seemed to have thought of something and reached out to take the storage bag. Sure enough, the storage bag was actually the corpses of the 40 or so Imperial Thunder Sect disciples. They were thrown inside carelessly, and men and women were mixed together, just like goods. Fellow Taoist Bai, what is the meaning of this? Xiao Hua suppressed his anger and said coldly, Didn't I say before? I didn't come to bid for this thing, and I disdain to use this thing to fake battle merits. Haha, fellow Taoist, don't be agitated. Bai Xing said with a smile, Fellow Taoist, this is the first time you've come to this Bai's negotiation, so you naturally don't know the rules, and this Bai definitely doesn't care. However, since fellow Taoist has already participated in this negotiation, the first rule must be obeyed. The first rule is that we have to negotiate the price of this corpse. Do we have to fake battle merits? Xiao Hua said coldly, Fellow Taoist, you're wrong. The smile on Bai Xing's face didn't change, and he was still very polite. This is the first time fellow Taoist has come here, so we have to negotiate the price. As for whether fellow Taoist uses battle merits, that's fellow Taoist's business. This Bai and the others won't care. What if I don't pay spirit stones? Xiao Hua stood up and asked lightly. When Bai Xing heard this, he didn't seem to be surprised or nervous, and he said with a smile, Fellow Taoist, it's fine if you don't pay spirit stones. This Bai won't force you, nor will I prevent you from leaving this restriction, nor will I let anyone kill you in the Sky Patrol City. Of course, I won't find someone to kill you on the battlefield. Are you threatening I? Xiao Hua's coldness became stronger. No, this Bai doesn't mean that at all. Bai Xing said with a smile, This Bai just wants to say that this has nothing to do with spirit stones. Since I can do such a business here, I naturally have an inextricable relationship with the Sky Patrol City. Let me tell you, fellow Taoist, this Bai has someone above. Humph, Xiao Hua sneered. What I want to say is, even if I don't care, the group of cultivators waiting outside the tea house, they may not be at ease. When Bai Xing said this, it was as if she had put the finishing touches on a dragon. She stopped and looked at Xiao Hua meaningfully, as if she was waiting for Xiao Hua to make a decision. -8. Chapter 2480. Io, that's right. Xiao Hua groaned. Damn it. This group of sanctimonious bastards is doing such a vicious transaction here. If I don't participate, I'll be an untainted piece of trash. How can they be at ease? Even if two cultivators from some sect fight for the same storage bag, it's still safer than me. Do you understand, fellow Taoist? Bai Xing took the opportunity to say, what about the cultivator who came with I? Xiao Hua said coldly, he didn't negotiate anything, right? Hee, fellow Taoist, don't compare yourself with him. Bai Xing said with a smile, this Bai's tiger tally is recorded. It can be traced to who it is given to and who it is given to. This Bai doesn't know who he is, but this Bai knows the tiger tally that he uses. Besides, even if I can't find any trace of you from the tiger tally, you've braved the ban to come to my Sky Patrol tea house. I've asked someone to patrol the city guards of Sky Patrol City. I'll definitely be able to find you, right? Do you want to force this old man to kill you? Xiao Hua said coldly. Bai Xing was not afraid at all. He cupped his hands and said, fellow Taoist, this Bai is doing business. I emphasize that harmony brings wealth. How can I argue with you? These are the rules. I won't hide it from you. If you don't take this storage bag, the cultivators in this tea house will definitely make things difficult for this Bai. Can you pity this Bai? Bai Xing said that he was pitiful, but there was no pitiful look on his face. He was very sure that Xiao Hua would definitely pay spirit stones to buy this storage bag. He had done this many times before. This was because he knew that Xiao Hua couldn't kill him, and Xiao Hua couldn't really face the many cultivators in the tea house. So what if I kill you all? Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed as killing intent rose within him. He was originally suppressing his anger, but now he was actually being forced to buy and sell. If we kill these filthy people, we can also let others know how filthy we are. Let them know. Thinking, Xiao Hua swung his Taoist robe and was about to use the heaven and earth sleeve to restrain Bai Xing. Looks like you've thought it through. When Bai Xing saw Xiao Hua's sleeve move, he thought that Xiao Hua was going to take out spirit stones. He smiled apologetically and said, actually, fellow Taoist didn't suffer any losses today. Just now, if I hadn't taken out a sword slip that wasn't a map and gave it to fellow Taoist, just the maps of those two cultivators, fellow Taoist would have had to spend countless spirit stones. Oh! Xiao Hua was dumbfounded. He quietly withdrew his magic power and then took out Bai Xing's sword scroll. He immersed his divine sense into it, and sure enough, it wasn't a map at all, but a damaged sword technique. This sword art. Xiao Hua glanced at the sword art and unconsciously became slightly stunned. This seems to be a sword scroll that transforms into a sword? What do you think, fellow Taoist? Am I a good friend? Bai Xing said with a smile, this sword technique is no ordinary sword technique. If I'm not wrong, it should be used by swordsmen. Of course, this sword technique is very damaged and the cultivators of my Tao sect are unable to use it. However, it allowed me to throw out a brick to attract jade today. Even if you spend some spirit stones to negotiate the price of these corpses and also get 2 maps, it's definitely killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Alright. Seeing Bai Xing's business to such an extent, Xiao Hua was really speechless. Although he didn't want to add fuel to the fire, but he was even more unwilling to expose his whereabouts at this time, and even more unwilling to attract the attention of the Snow Region's Taoist master. He could only pinch his nose and enter the trap. Great. Bai Xing bowed and said, thank you for your support, fellow Taoist. As he spoke, he quoted a number of spirit stones. Fortunately, Xiao Hua calculated a little, and this price was also fair, even lower than the price of others. Forget it. Why don't you give the other corpses to me too? Xiao Hua sighed. Fellow Taoist Bai is so benevolent. I can't not support you. Don't. Bai Xing hurriedly waved his hand and said, the number of corpses was specially prepared according to fellow Taoist's cultivation. If there are more, fellow Taoist won't be able to account for it. Moreover, doesn't fellow Taoist already have a thunderboat? When the time comes, find an opportunity to hand it over to the conference hall. The merit will be even greater than this. Sweat, why didn't I think of this? Xiao Hua naturally thought of the situation when he was bidding for the corpses earlier. This Bai Xing's business is really done to the point of perfection. After Xiao Hua paid the spirit stones and put the storage bag into his sleeve, Bai Xing happily accompanied Xiao Hua out of the restriction. Sure enough, on the first floor of the tea house, almost all the bidding cultivators were sitting there wearing camouflage clothes, each of them with a cup of spirit tea in front of them. "Waiter, serve this fellow Taoist some spirit tea," Bai Xing shouted as soon as he appeared in the tea house. "Yes, this little one will come right away," the waiter on the other side responded, and the atmosphere in the tea house clearly relaxed. Although everyone didn't talk, they all picked up their teacups and very contentedly tasted the spirit tea. Looking at the cup of spirit tea offered by the qi refining disciple, Xiaohua smiled bitterly. This spirit tea was very valuable. Not only was it a sum of spirit stones, but it was also the corpses of dozens of Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples. It was also his own life or the dozens of lives in the tea house. After a while, light gradually appeared outside the window, and the sound of people faintly came from the street of the tea house. The qi refining disciple very carefully opened the door of the tea house, then immediately stood behind the door respectfully. A cultivator who had been near the door for a long time immediately stood up and swaggered out. And after this cultivator left for a while, another cultivator stood up and followed him out. Xiaohua observed for a moment and found that they probably couldn't go out together. Basically, they had to wait for the cultivator in front of them to disappear on the street before the cultivator behind them could stand up. Xiaohua wasn't in a hurry. After waiting for everyone to leave, he stood up and slowly walked to the door. At this time, the sun had just risen, and the warm sunlight shone on Xiaohua's face. Xiaohua slightly narrowed his eyes and looked at the bright sun in the sky, muttering to himself, "There's light. It's really good." Then, he also stepped forward and went to the street without looking back. Behind Xiaohua, the door of the Heavenly Inspect tea house wasn't closed, and no one came in or out. No one knew that last night, there were actually a lot of military merits that appeared out of thin air in this place. Xiaohua naturally didn't go to the conference hall to receive his military merits. Instead, he returned to the Imperial Thunder Sect's encampment. He didn't go to the Imperial Thunder Sect's residence, but instead, he casually found an alchemy cave, activated the restriction, and sat down. Xiaohua clapped his hands and took out a piece of fragrant spirit tea from the space. With Ziye's jade slip and the fragrant spirit tea seedling, it was really easy for Xiaohua to grow the fragrant spirit tea in the space. However, Xiaohua didn't have the hobby of drinking tea. He was extremely used to growing, picking, and collecting the fragrant spirit tea. How could he have thought that this thing was actually used by soul cultivators? Smelling the fragrant spirit tea's fragrance, Xiaohua couldn't help but salivate. He smacked his lips a few times and felt a little regretful. He regretted that he didn't get a tea set in the tea house. His space was a dazzling collection of treasures, jade slips, and even spiritual herbs, but there was no tea set. Even if he wanted to drink a mouthful of the fragrant spirit tea, he couldn't. "If I can't drink it, can't this young master eat it?" Xiaohua thought, and put the piece of fragrant spirit tea into his mouth. Immediately, a burst of fragrance filled his mouth, and a sweet and refreshing feeling spread down his throat into his body. Feeling the refreshing feeling, Xiaohua smiled and said, "I'm afraid Ziyu was tempted by this fragrance. If it wasn't for this extreme fragrance, how could he, a child of an aristocratic family, personally brew tea? But how do I use this so-called twilight moon?" Xiaohua waved his hand and another piece of fragrant spirit tea appeared in his hand. Then, Xiaohua closed his eyes and several soul strands came out from his eyes. It's really interesting. When Xiaohua's soul strands came into contact with the dark green fragrant spirit tea, he felt a kind of comfort. This comfort was extremely refreshing, similar to the refreshing feeling on the tip of the tongue. However, one penetrated the heart and lungs, filling the body, while the other directly rushed into the depths of the soul. When the refreshing feeling entered the dark cloud formed by the soul strands, the entire dark cloud slightly swayed. Then, a wave of fluctuation came out from the dark cloud and entered the soul strands. When the fluctuation came from the soul strands into the fragrant spirit tea, the soul strands danced like tentacles. As the soul strands danced, the fragrant spirit tea also vibrated strangely and floated in the air. In the blink of an eye, A thumb-sized dark green crescent moon flashed out from the fragrant spirit tea. It was entangled by the soul strands, and a dry, yellow leaf slowly fell from the soul strands and floated into the air. This fluctuation is soul power. Suddenly, a lightning-like realization appeared in Xiao Hua's mind. Previously, I thought soul power was the same as a person's strength. Being able to lift things with one's arms is strength. Although the soul strands were able to entangle the soul-suppressing bell, that kind of strength was not soul power. This fluctuation is true soul power. Although the soul strands were able to entangle the fragrant spirit tea, if it was not soul power, then it was the fragrant spirit tea. Only this fluctuation can take out the dawnlight moon from the fragrant spirit tea. This fluctuation is true soul power. Xiao Hua's mind moved like lightning. And the soul cultivation method is to temper the fluctuations. Isn't it just tempering soul power? Isn't it the same principle as the Tao sect's magic power? Ha ha ha, Xiao Hua almost laughed out loud. Just as Xiao Hua was thinking, the dawnlight moon followed the fluctuation of the soul strands into the Dharma eye, entering the mysterious place. Once the dawnlight moon entered the mysterious place, it immediately emitted a misty emerald green brilliance. This brilliance was extremely similar to the green seal text's green color, illuminating the mysterious dark cloud. When the dawnlight moon entered the aura ring, the entire aura ring was filled with emerald green brilliance, like the hazy moonlight between dawn and dusk. -8. Chapter 2481. Moreover, this emerald green brilliance contained a thick and clear fragrance. As the brilliance densely filled the entire heaven ring, it combined with the fragrance of the black silk wood from before, becoming increasingly rich. Looking at Xiao Hua's primordial spirit and the little white dragon soul that accompanied it, it danced even more, just like a cultivator who had taken an extremely powerful spirit pill. Great, seeing his primordial spirit becoming increasingly stronger, and following the little white dragon soul, his primordial spirit swam even faster, rushing to the peak of the heaven ring several times faster than before. If nothing unexpected happened, he feared that within a few years, he would be able to complete the first stage of the soul cultivation technique and enter the second stage of the clear spirit heaven. This is the little white dragon soul that is on the verge of dissipating, and it is currently condensing. Its soul is naturally extremely powerful, and this condensing process naturally drives the cultivation of my soul. Xiao Hua naturally understood the reason behind it. The so-called to redeem others is to redeem oneself. Ba. Motherfucker, why is it related to Buddhism again? Xiao Hua suddenly woke up again. The 3,000 great Das in the end. I'm afraid it really is all the great Das. Maybe soul cultivation and Buddhism are also one of the great Das. Seeing that his most unremarkable soul cultivation technique had obtained a trace of opportunity, Xiao Hua was very happy, and withdrew his mind from the mysterious dark clouds. He took out the sword slip that Bai Xing had half sold and half given. This sword slip was very damaged, and there was no complete sentence that could be linked together. Xiao Hua could only reluctantly read this sword slip once, and roughly understood the meaning. This sword slip naturally has no value. Nascent soul cultivators wouldn't care, and ordinary gold core cultivators definitely wouldn't want it. However, Bai Xing's business acumen is really deep in his bones. This kind of smooth and slick person can be considered to have saved his life today. Xiao Hua sneered as he sent the sword slip into the space, and then secretly pondered, just as I expected, this sword transformation technique involves the secret method of using the primordial spirit to control the sword, and only by reaching the primordial spirit to control the sword can one truly step into the sword transformation technique. However, this sword transformation technique is a bit strange. It actually has the method of forming the sword spirit. In other words, fusing the sword spirit and sword intent into one to form the sword heart. This sword heart was the key to controlling the flying sword with the primordial spirit. Damn it, this young master is confused. Wasn't this sword intent the manifestation of a sword spirit? Wasn't it similar to the spiritual will of a cultivator? How could they merge into one? Wasn't there only one of them? Furthermore, Looking at the synthesis of the sword heart, it seemed to be somewhat similar to condensing a core. When did sword cultivators become similar to cultivators' spells? Xiaohua was a little dizzy because of this specious transforming into sword technique. He wanted to refine a few fire runes, or see if he could refine Lingli Pill. At this time, he simply put these aside. He stretched out his hand and took out all the sword slips he collected. He checked them carefully one by one from the pregnant sword. For several days in a row, Xiaohua's brows were tightly knitted. Until one day, Xiaohua suddenly slapped his forehead, and the corner of his mouth revealed a trace of a smile. He put all the sword slips into the space and said with self-mockery, "So this sword intent is only a swordsman's understanding of flying swords. It's the soul of the flying sword in the swordsman's heart." When the swordsman tempered the sword intent, he also gradually condensed his soul into the sword intent. The sword spirit was a trace of the primordial spirit of the swordsman. With the cultivation and breeding, it had spirituality, so the flying sword also had a spirit. However, this sword spirit was only a means for the swordsman to control. The cultivation of the swordsman was also divided by the tempering of the sword intent, not by the strength of the sword spirit. If the swordsman wanted to enter the transforming sword realm, he had to plant the sword intent in the sword spirit and let his soul and the sword spirit combine. Only then could he and the flying sword become one. This should be similar to the Taoist sect's pregnant baby, not condensing a core. It was precisely because of this that the swordsman could only have one soul and one sword heart. Therefore, the swordsman could only have one flying sword in his life, and he couldn't sacrificial refine the second one. This was completely different from the Taoist sect's pregnant baby. A cultivator might have one, or two, or even more life-bound magic treasures, as long as the cultivator's mind is strong enough. But thinking of this, Xiaohua was somewhat confused. That's not right. Senior Li Xiubai had 9 flying swords. His sword intent was 9 stars soaring sun. This sword pill must also have his sword heart. But why didn't Taoist Master Brightsword and Senior Li Xiubai's Jade Slips mention this? Since the sword pill doesn't have a sword heart, then what about Senior Li Xiubai? Did he really die with the Tao? Also, that little deer is clearly Taoist Master Brightsword's sword intent, right? Why is it so docile? Where is the sharpness of a flying sword? If it's like this, will I still need to refine this 9 stars soaring sun sword pill? It seems like the second sword pill is already complete. If I introduce the primordial spirit brand, I can successfully nurture the sword. Originally, Xiaohua didn't know the mysteries of the Tao of the sword and didn't know fear at all. He thought that this sword pill was like a cultivator's magic tool, and after refining it, it would be his. But now that he saw more and knew more, his heart became increasingly uncertain. Powerful primordial spirit. Thinking of this, Xiaohua's eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. Damn it! If it dares to be more powerful than my primordial spirit, I still have a little white dragon in my soul. Even Taoist Master Brightsword and Li Xiubai are only nascent soul cultivators. If they have any more tricks up their sleeves and do something to the sword pill, I will wait for the moment of danger to summon the little white dragon. Humph, that is an existence that can directly face 3 nascent soul cultivators. I don't believe that I can't deal with these 2 people. Also, what is my boy? That is Di Ting, an existence that even the Empress of the 10,000 demon realm trembles in fear. Who dares to make a move against me? After being ruthless, Xiaohua laughed again. Besides, Li Xiubai and Taoist Master Brightsword didn't make arrangements when they were on the brink of despair. If they want to live, there are many ways. There is no need to do these dirty things. I, on the other hand, have seen too much in the dark. There is really no need to measure the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. Looking at Taoist Master Brightsword's sword intent, I can know that this is a magnanimous gentleman. There is no need to worry. Thinking about this, Xiaohua opened his mouth and the second sword pill flew out with Buddha fire. It was also green and red. It landed in the air and spun around like a spiritual thing. Come out. Xiaohua opened his mouth again and the Zhu Ming flew out. It drew a beautiful sword arc in the air and landed beside the sword pill. When the Zhu Ming came out, The sword pill became even more lively, as if it had seen someone close to it. It circled around the Zhu Ming rapidly, as if it was acting coquettishly and showing off. It was more like a feeling of urgency. Ha ha ha, it is indeed a flying sword. It is really different from ordinary magic tools. Xiaohua laughed. Just as he was about to use the primordial spirit imprint, suddenly, another thought appeared in Xiaohua's mind like a thunderbolt. Damn it, this flying sword has a sword spirit. Oh no, it has a sword heart in the future. Isn't it like a magic tool having a weapon spirit? Isn't this a spirit tool? However, this weapon spirit is the same as a cultivator's nascent soul, the sword heart. Xiaohua was somewhat dumbstruck, as if he had discovered something inconceivable. No, it is definitely not that simple. Xiaohua shook his head again. If it is like this, how could the Dao sect cultivators not know? How could a nascent soul senior be unable to forge a spirit tool? There must be something strange about this. Or perhaps, nascent soul cultivators are not willing to use their bodies to feed a weapon and become a weapon spirit. Forget it. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. If I think about it too much, I will definitely go crazy. Thinking of this, Xiaohua hurriedly withdrew his train of thought. The great Tao of cultivation was truly vast and boundless. Walking around carelessly without guidance was truly quite dangerous. Xiaohua sat quietly for a while, then used a sword cultivator's primordial spirit branding technique and imprinted the primordial spirit from the dream executioner onto the second sword pill. Sensing that the primordial spirit was once again dormant, Xiaohua smiled. He knew that after this dormant state, a flying sword would appear in this world, and another sword light would be able to kill evil. If this second sword pill corresponded to the 9 stars transit, it would be the morning star. However, in this young master's hands, it will not be so refined. The first sword light is the dream executioner, then this young master's second sword light will be the mountain splitter. Mountain splitter, unrivaled. This young master will split open all the mountains of injustice in this world. Wah! A sword cry seemed to come from the dream executioner. The mountain splitter also sensed it. Seeing this, Xiaohua became even more delighted. Haha, great. This young master's matters are going smoothly. It seems that I need to refine some. Unfortunately, just as he thought of this, the restriction of the pill refining cave shook, as if a transmission talisman had arrived. Which blind fool? Xiaohua was somewhat angry, but immediately after, he shrugged his shoulders. What do you think? Who would look for me at this time? It can only be Senior Marshal Brother Li. Forget it. Senior Marshal Brother Li Zongbao has summoned me, so I must go out to battle. What fire talisman? Let's talk about it later. Unfortunately, when Xiaohua opened the restriction of the alchemy room, he saw a disciple on duty from the Imperial Thunder sect carefully standing at the door. When he saw Xiaohua, he immediately smiled respectfully and said, "Junior greets Marshal Uncle. May I know if you are Marshal Uncle Xiaohua?" "That's me." Xiaohua was somewhat baffled, but his heart trembled slightly, and he cautiously asked, "What matter does Marshal Nephew have?" Junior has disturbed Marshal Uncle Zhao's quiet cultivation. That disciple still spoke softly, as if he was a female cultivator. Today, Junior is on duty. Just now, at the Imperial Thunder Sect's encampment, I saw a Foundation Establishment senior come to visit Marshal Uncle Xiao. Marshal Uncle Dui, who was on duty at the door, told Junior to inform Marshal Uncle Xiao. However, Junior has searched everywhere for Marshal Uncle Xiao. -8. Chapter 2482. Seeing that this disciple was so long-winded, Xiaohua laughed in his heart. Since it wasn't anything special, he patiently listened to the disciple. When this junior was hesitating whether to inform that Foundation Establishment senior, I suddenly thought of whether Marshal Uncle Xiao would be meditating in this cave, so, at this moment, the disciple saw Xiaohua's faint smile and immediately became reserved again. He bowed and said, "This junior has said too much. Marshal Uncle, please follow this junior to the entrance of the encampment. That Foundation Establishment senior must be waiting anxiously." "Okay," Xiaohua replied concisely. The entrance of the encampment wasn't far from the cave, and this distance was enough for Xiao Hua to guess. However, when he saw this individual cultivator who came to visit, he definitely didn't expect it to be him. This person was none other than the Qi refinement cultivator Xiao Hua saved outside Haoming City by Fengliang. However, at this time, Bai Fengliang was already a foundation establishment cultivator. He wore a light blue Taoist robe and looked quite imposing. Seeing Xiao Hua appear at the entrance of the Imperial Thunder Sect, Bai Fengliang's face showed a trace of joy and a trace of ecstasy. He almost lost his composure and took a few steps forward. Then, he stopped and waited there respectfully. Huh, Bai Fengliang, why are you looking for me? Could it be? Xiao Hua was very afraid of the Heavenly Demon Sect when he was in Haoming City and didn't understand the situation, so he used the Foundation Establishment Pill as bait to let Bai Fengliang go to the Heavenly Demon Sect to be his eyes and ears. However, he also made it clear to Bai Fengliang that everything depended on Bai Fengliang's willingness. If he didn't want to tell him the situation of the Heavenly Demon Sect, Xiao Hua would absolutely not force him. However, seeing Bai Fengliang today was absolutely unexpected. He didn't expect Bai Fengliang to take the initiative to come to him and report the situation of the Heavenly Demon Sect to him. Fellow Taoist Xiao, Bai Fengliang bowed very elegantly and said, I've long admired your name and even wanted to make friends with you. Now that I've taken the liberty to come here, please forgive me. Xiao Hua blinked and smiled bitterly in his heart. He then cupped his hands and said, I'm just an ordinary cultivator of the Imperial Thunder Sect. How could I have any reputation? Fellow Taoist Bai must be joking. Haha, fellow Taoist Xiao, this isn't the place to talk. I've prepared some wine. How about inviting fellow Taoist Xiao? Very good. Xiao Hua was also unsure whether the Imperial Thunder Sect's encampment would allow the so-called rogue cultivator, Bai Fengliang, who was actually a disciple of the Devil Sect, to enter. Since Bai Fengliang had already prepared a place, he also nodded his head. Seeing Bai Fengliang leading the way, Xiao Hua hurriedly asked, Fellow Taoist Bai, are we going to the Heavenly Survey Tea House? Sky Patrol Tea House? Bai Fengliang was stunned for a moment before he said with a smile, No, I'm staying at an inn in Sentry City. It's very peaceful there, so I'd like to invite fellow cultivator Xiao to have a chat there. Very good. Hearing that it wasn't the Sky Survey Tea House, Xiao Hua felt relieved. Since he knew how filthy the Sky Survey Tea House was, Xiao Hua didn't even want to take a single step into it. He even thought that if he met Ziyi in the future, he would definitely tell him not to take even half a step into that tea house. Bai Fengliang followed Bai Fengliang to the inn and opened the door to enter. Bai Fengliang immediately bowed and said, Bai Fengliang greets the Vice Sect Master. Xiao Hua was stunned. Then, his magic power surged and he naturally prepared to kill Bai Fengliang on the spot. However, he heard Bai Fengliang say, Bai Fengliang is really blind. He actually didn't know the identity of the Vice Sect Master. If the Sect Master didn't ask me to come here to greet the Vice Sect Master, I would still be in the dark. Oh, that's right. Xiao Hua suddenly realized, Zhang Qingxiao, that bastard, said that he would only attack after he personally introduced me. Not now. However, Xiao Hua immediately had an impulse from his heart. An impulse to stretch out his leg and kick Zhang Qingxiao twice. An impulse to kick Zhang Qingxiao's white face that was popular throughout the Dawn Rain continent into a persimmon. Damn it! When did I become the vice sect leader of the Heavenly Demon Sect? Feeling that Xiao Hua's situation was not right, Bai Fengliang hurriedly said, Don't worry, Vice Sect Master Xiao. Only I know about this. When I received the Sect Master's order, I also made a blood oath that I would never reveal it. Don't worry, Vice Sect Master. AI. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, Get up. Then, he sat on the bed in the room and looked around. With a wave of his hand, dozens of rabbit talismans flew out. Oh, that's right. These rabbit talismans can now be refined with jade marrow. Xiao Hua saw the rabbit talismans fly out and grabbed with his hand, activating the array. He couldn't help but think to himself, Vice Sect Master Xiao is indeed skilled. Seeing Xiao Hua casually set up the array, Bai Fengliang's heart was filled with respect. Xiao Hua nodded and asked, Why did the Sect Master send you here? Does he know that you know me? Yes, Vice Sect Master Xiao knows. Bai Fengliang stood there respectfully and replied, after I received the Foundation Establishment Pill from Vice Sect Master, I quickly reached the Foundation Establishment realm. Thus, there was an envoy from the Sage Sect who came to find me. At the same time, he asked for my opinion and brought me to the Sage Sect. Sage Sect? Xiaohua snickered and thought, this Zhang Qingxiao is really good at pranking. Isn't it just the Heavenly Demon Sect? What Sage Sect? What a welcoming envoy. After passing the Sage Sect's envoy's assessment and considering my physique, I was allowed to enter the Pure Lotus Sect of the 13 Sacred Sects. Bai Fengliang said again, in the past few decades, I've been practicing hard and my progress is not bad. I've gained the favor of the sect's venerable, so I was sent out to gain experience. A few days ago, when I was in Haoming City, I received the sect master's order. This order was issued by a venerable on behalf of the sect master. At that time, there were many sacred sect disciples in Haoming City, and there were 11 of them who had reached the Foundation Establishment realm. Because I practiced the Taoist sect's cultivation method and used to be a rogue cultivator, I was sent to meet Vice Sect Master Xiao. As far as I know, the sect master doesn't know that I've met Vice Sect Master Xiao. Oh, I see. Hearing Bai Fengliang's complicated explanation, Xiao Hua frowned. However, he heard that Zhang Qingxiao didn't issue the sect master's order directly. It was issued when they met outside the Sky Patrol City last time. Thinking that Zhang Qingxiao had brought the elixir he needed so quickly, he felt warm in his heart. Give it to me, Xiao Hua said as he stretched out his hand. Yes, Bai Fengliang wasn't surprised. He carefully took out a storage bag from his chest and handed it to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua took the storage bag and scanned it with his divine thought. He frowned and said, why is there so little? This is too little? Bai Fengliang's heart skipped a beat. He was secretly shocked, but he didn't dare to show it. He said in a low voice, Vice Sect Master Xiao, these are all the elixir pills in Haoming City. Elixir pills from the other 7 major cities are also being collected. When the elixir pills are found, they will be sent to Sky Patrol City. At that time, I will give it to Vice Sect Master Xiao until Vice Sect Master Xiao thinks it's suitable. That's more like it. Xiao Hua nodded slightly. With a wave of his hand, he put the storage bag containing more than 60 dry distance pills into his space. In addition, there are instructions in the sect master's order. Vice Sect Master, if you need anything, you can tell me. I have the sect master's order in my hand, and I can mobilize most of the disciples in the sacred sect. Bai Fengliang said respectfully, what else do you want? Xiao Hua thought for a moment and shook his head with a smile. Forget it. Take these things first? Yes, I understand. Bai Fengliang replied carefully. By the way, Bai Fengliang, do you still remember what you told me that day? Xiao Hua said with a smile. What sacred sect, and what are the 13 sects? Hearing Xiao Hua asking about the 13 holy sects, Bai Fengliang was slightly taken aback. However, after pondering for a moment, his expression changed slightly. He smiled apologetically and said, Vice Sect Leader Xiao, please don't make fun of me. You are the Vice Sect Master of the Heavenly Demon Sect. How can you not know about the 13 sects? Xiao Hua stared into Bai Fengliang's eyes and asked word by word, Bai Fengliang, look at me carefully. Do you think I'm the Vice Sect Master of your Heavenly Demon Sect? Bai Fengliang bit his lips, as if he was thinking and hesitating. In the jade slip that the Sect Master of your Heavenly Demon Sect gave you, did he say that I'm the Vice Sect Master? Xiao Hua asked coldly. I don't remember it clearly. Bai Fengliang woke up and smiled apologetically. The jade slip that came with the Sect Master's order can only be read once. Moreover, I was too excited and I didn't see it clearly. What if you said it was Vice Sect Master Xiao? Or Xiao Hua, Vice Sect Master? Xiao Hua asked again. It seems to be Xiao Hua, Vice Sect Master. Bai Fengliang hesitated for a moment before answering. It's good that you understand. Xiao Hua nodded and sneered. I'm only at the Foundation Establishment realm. How can I be the Vice Sect Master? I'm afraid that when you saw my name and the Vice Sect Master's title, you thought. That's why you mistook me for the Vice Sect Master. Bai Fengliang's face immediately turned red. Xiao Hua's words hit the nail on the head, revealing his joy at that time. When he saw Xiao Hua's name, he was astonished. While he was shocked, he also let his imagination run wild. To be able to form a relationship with the vice sect master of the heavenly demon sect, he really understood what kind of glorious future he would have in the heavenly demon sect in the future. As for the content after that, he was really in a trance. I was indeed a little too pleased with myself. Bai Fengliang replied embarrassedly. This vice sect master is someone else. You don't need to worry about who it is. Just follow the instructions on your sect master's order and give the item to me. Xiao Hua nodded and said, however, at this time, it's up to you to fulfill your promise. Of course, Bai Fengliang, if you're not willing, you don't need to answer. I definitely won't force you. Speaking up to here, Xiao Hua asked again. Bai Fengliang was forced into a helpless state, and a pitiful expression appeared on his face. After all, he wasn't sure if this was the heavenly demon sect's probing technique. If he didn't answer well, he would be killed. -8. Chapter 2483. This lowly one. Bai Fengliang smiled apologetically. This lowly one is just an ordinary disciple of the Holy Gate. Fellow Taoist Xiao, if you don't want to say it, then don't say it. Xiao Hua smiled faintly. After all, you and I had such an agreement back then. Many thanks, fellow Taoist Xiao. Bai Fengliang really wanted to call Xiao Hua Deputy Sect Master Xiao. If you have any more things coming for me in the future, feel free to come to the Imperial Thunder Sect's encampment to find me. Xiao Hua waved his hand and was about to put away the rabbit array. But at that moment, Bai Fengliang's body trembled and he hurriedly shouted, Fellow Taoist Xiao, please wait. Oh, is there anything else? Xiao Hua asked curiously. It's like this. Bai Fengliang bit his lips and said, I was able to join the Holy Gate and have my current achievements all because of fellow Taoist Zhao's guidance and arrangements. That day, fellow Taoist Xiao had an agreement with me. Although I didn't agree to it, I already agreed in my heart. Since fellow Taoist Xiao asked about it today, how could I dare to hide it? Oh, is that so? Xiao Hua smiled and said, I'm not some deputy sect master of your Holy Gate. Moreover, I might have been sent by your sect master to test you. Bai Fengliang's face was filled with embarrassment as he said, even if fellow Taoist Xiao was sent by my Holy Gate to test me, I still owe fellow Taoist Xiao a favor. I can't not repay this favor. All right, tell me what you know. Xiao Hua didn't sit down, but stood there and said. A faint smile flashed across Bai Fengliang's face as if a heavy stone had been lifted off his chest. He said, actually, ever since I joined the Holy Gate, I have always remembered fellow Taoist Zhao's words. I have always paid attention to the Holy Gate's situation. However, the Holy Gate's rules are very strict, and the various sects don't have much interaction with each other. I only know about my Pure Lotus sect. Oh, then tell me about the 13 holy sects first? Xiao Hua was bewildered when he heard this. No matter how he heard it, this so-called 13 sacred sects seemed to be related to the Buddhist sect. He didn't know what Zhang Qingxiao meant by turning the heavenly demon sect into this state, so he asked with interest. The 13 sacred sects are the heavenly demon sect, Tiangang sect, Tianfan sect, earthly fiend sect, earthly Ao sect, earthly spirit sect, human enlightenment sect, human splendor sect, human Zen sect, pure lotus sect, pure land sect, yin-yang sect, and fairy sect. However, apart from Lu Weigang, the sect master of the Pure Lotus sect, I don't know who the deputy sect masters of the other 12 sects are. Bai Fengliang smiled bitterly. Lu Weigang? Xiao Hua is stunned. Is this Lu Weigang a former Changbai sect disciple? I don't know. Bai Fengliang shook his head and said, however, the pristine Lotus sect cultivates orthodox Taoist spells. Many of our disciples come from independent cultivators or other cultivation sections. Many of them are disciples of other sects. As he spoke, Lu Weigang thoughtfully looked at Xiao Hua. What else? Xiao Hua asked again. Bai Fengliang shook his head helplessly. Fellow Taoist Xiao, believe it or not, this is all I know. I don't know anything more. Oh, right, there's another news. I've only heard that the Heavenly Demon sect is going to be established. Seeing that Bai Fengliang really knew very little, Xiaohua was extremely disappointed. However, he was really happy for Zhang Qingxiao in his heart. After all, to be able to operate a devil sect to such a strict level was really not easy. Xiaohua was confident that he could not do it. However, Xiaohua asked curiously, "What? Hasn't the Heavenly Demon sect already been established? Why do you still want to establish a sect?" "I don't know." Bai Fengliang smiled apologetically, "but it's all rumors." "I don't know either." "Well, okay." Xiaohua nodded and asked, "What cultivation method are you cultivating? What other elixirs do you need?" Bai Fengliang's face showed joy and said, "I'm cultivating a cultivation method of the Pure Lotus sect. However, I only have half of the cultivation method for the early and middle stages of the Foundation Establishment realm. Moreover, I need all the elixirs that fellow Taoist Xiao usually uses. Show me your cultivation method." Xiaohua very naturally raised his hand. Yes. Bai Fengliang did not dare to neglect and showed his cultivation method to Xiaohua. "Well, so it's this." Xiaohua nodded and clapped his hand. He also took out a jade slip and handed it to Bai Fengliang. "This jade slip is also bestowed. Take it, it should be at the late stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. In addition, I'll give you these elixirs as well. Consider it as thanks for your hard work in Sky Patrol City." As he spoke, Xiaohua took out another storage bag. Bai Fengliang was overjoyed. When he finished looking at the contents of the storage bag, he was even more ecstatic. He bowed and said, "Thank you, fellow Taoist Xiao." "Thank you, Deputy Sect Leader." "Well," Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "I'll tell him about your matter. In addition, you can show this jade slip to Sect Leader before this matter is over. Remember, it's a matter of life and death." This is... When Bai Fengliang heard this, cold sweat immediately appeared on his forehead. He said in extreme panic, I know. Thank you, fellow Taoist Xiao." At this moment, Bai Fengliang finally understood that his mission was absolutely dangerous. If it were not for Xiaohua's jade slip, his life would really be in danger. "Nonsense." Seeing Bai Fengliang's ashen face, Xiaohua sneered. Only the two of them knew about his relationship with Zhang Qingxiao. Since Zhang Qingxiao dared to mention Deputy Sect Leader Xiao in the jade slip, then Bai Fengliang would definitely die after seeing this jade slip. Zhang Qingxiao would definitely kill him to silence him. In fact, not only Zhang Qingxiao, even Xiaohua had this intention. If it were not for Zhang Qingxiao wanting to go to Han Country and Xiaohua urgently needing this pill, Zhang Qingxiao would definitely come personally and not let others do it. However, Zhang Qingxiao's subordinate just happened to be someone familiar with Xiaohua. After Xiaohua probed, he felt that Bai Fengliang was still trustworthy, so he had the intention to protect himself. As long as you remember, some things must be buried in your heart for a lifetime. This is the only way to preserve your life. Xiaohua made a grabbing motion, and a dozen talismans fell into his hand. He said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Bai, you can open the room's restriction now?" "Yes, I'll open it now." Bai Fengliang hurriedly activated the token and opened the room's restriction. He said respectfully, "I'll send fellow Taoist Xiao out." "No need. You just need to do your job well." Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "I still have other things to do. You can just stay here." "Yes, I understand." Bai Fengliang nodded and asked again, "If other big cities have things coming over, how can I find fellow Taoist?" "Use the messaging talisman." Xiaohua thought for a moment, then clapped his hand and took out his messaging talisman and handed it to Bai Fengliang. After Bai Fengliang received it, Xiaohua turned around and walked out of the room, quickly leaving the inn. Although Xiaohua's face was calm, he muttered in his heart, "Second senior brother's ambition is really big." He ignited the sword Dao battle, and he took advantage of the chaos to rob. Presumably, he wants to take advantage of the fact that the other sects have no time to care about him and announce the Heavenly Demon sect to the public. This courage. TSK. He's really a good disciple of Master. When he thought of Xiao Yuehong, he thought of his lazy and idle cultivation attitude. It was this little cultivator who stood aloof from worldly affairs that was killed by 3 nascent soul cultivators. The heavenly Tao was really heartless. Since the heavenly Tao was heartless, why would Xiao Hua stop Zhang Qingxiao from establishing the sect? With a swoosh sound, another messaging talisman flew to Xiao Hua's front. Oh? Xiao Hua stretched out his hand and took the messaging talisman. He looked at it with his divine thought and said with a smile, "It seems that what will come will come." Then, he did not go in the direction of the Imperial Thunder Sect's encampment. Instead, he turned around and went to the city gate of Sky Patrol City. When he arrived at the city gate, he saw that the security was extremely tight. The cultivators who came in were considered good, but the cultivators who went out were all interrogated. Xiao Hua looked at it coldly, knowing that it was the aftermath of his assassination of Tu Hong. Himph, if I can find any flaws in this place, can I still be an expert who can kill a golden core cultivator? Xiao Hua sneered secretly. Big brother. Xiao Hua had just stood still when an extremely familiar divine thought swept over him. Xiao Mao's voice was heard not far away. Xiao Hua looked up and saw Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao standing in a corner a few hundred feet away from the city gate. They were quietly watching everything that happened at the city gate. Little brother greets senior brother Li. Xiao Hua walked slowly to Li Zongbao and cupped his hands. Senior brother, you called me over. Are you going out of Sky Patrol City? Yes. Li Zongbao said faintly. Now that the war has begun, it's the best time for us to kill Qingjian. If we don't go now, when will we? Yes, I'll listen to senior brother Li's orders. Xiao Hua smiled, but then he asked curiously, but, senior brother Li, don't you have a special order from the conference hall? Why don't you use the teleportation formation but go out through this place? The teleportation formation is currently transporting disciples from various sects out. It's very busy. Xiao Mao answered excitedly, as if killing Qin Jian was something that he yearned for day and night. Well, that's one of the reasons. There's another reason. I'll explain it to you when we're out of Sky Patrol City. Li Zongbao waved his hand. Yes, Xiao Hua was puzzled, but he still answered. Most of the cultivators who were going out of Sky Patrol City were not participating in the war. Their cultivation levels were only around the beginner stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. They were reluctant to use the teleportation formation of Sky Patrol City, so they could only go out through the city gate. There were many of them, and they were in groups. There were actually a few long lines in front of the city gate. Li Zongbao did not care about these ordinary cultivators at all. He clapped his hands and took out the special order from the conference hall. He raised his hand and walked past the crowd to the front of the line. Where did this cultivator come from? Why is he so unruly? A cultivator in the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment realm said anxiously, "We're all going out. Why are you?" Sure. A cultivator next to him hurriedly pulled the cultivator's sleeve and whispered a few words. The cultivator shrunk his neck and stopped talking. Li Zongbao turned around and looked at them coldly. He then walked to the front of two city guards in the late stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. -8. Chapter 2484. The two city guards had already seen Li Zongbao coming out from the crowd. They looked at each other and quickly stepped in front of Li Zongbao and the other two. Fellow cultivator from the Utopia faction, the city guard in front raised his hand and said coldly, "Although you are a disciple participating in the battle, according to the rules of the Sky Patrol City, you still have to line up at the back. Please don't overstep." Li Zongbao raised his hand, and the council hall's special permit was held in front of the city guard. "What's this?" The city guard was slightly stunned. "This is the special permit of the Yinshi Mansion's council hall. We want to go out of the Sky Patrol City. Please make an exception." Xiao Mao knew that Li Zongbao was impatient with the city guards of the Sky Patrol City, so he quickly cupped his hands and said. The city guard frowned and scanned the special permit with his divine thought. He said lightly, "The special permit of the council hall is used by all cultivation sections. Of course, it can be used in the Sky Patrol City. However, the city governor of the Sky Patrol City has issued a ban. In order to find the swordsman who assassinated Senior Tu Hong, we must strengthen the investigation of the cultivators entering and leaving the Sky Patrol City. Fellow cultivator, please go back and line up." "How dare you?" Xiao Hua scolded. "Isn't the Sky Patrol City under the jurisdiction of the council hall? Don't the city guards of the Sky Patrol City obey the special permit of the Council Hall? If so, I'll go back and ask the elders of the Council Hall when did the Sky Patrol City run out of the jurisdiction of the Council Hall? Don't. Another city guard next to him poked the city guard and smiled apologetically. Fellow cultivators, don't be anxious. My junior brother is Senior Tu Hong's disciple. He has not rested for dozens of days in order to find the swordsman who killed Senior Tuesday. Fellow cultivators, you know that Qin Jian is the public enemy of all cultivators. We are looking for Qin Jian for the benefit of everyone. So, haha, since that's the case, this Xiao understands. Xiao Hua smiled. However, I heard that Qin Jian is an illusory swordsman who can assassinate. Senior Tuesday, I'm afraid it's not easy for you to arrest him, right? Yes, yes. The city guard took 2 steps forward and said with a smile, that may be the case, but we still have to do our best. We have to let Senior Tu Hong rest in peace. We won a Sky Patrol City because of this, Xiao Mao said with a smile. We also received news that Qin Jian is somewhere in Huan Nation. Speaking of this, Xiao Mao looked embarrassed. While the Sky Patrol City was arresting Qin Jian, Xiao Mao was searching for news of Qin Jian in the Huan Kingdom. Didn't this mean that the city guards of the Sky Patrol City were busy? Yes, there are too many rumors at this time. No one can tell which one is true. As long as we have the heart and effort, Senior Tu will be happy. The city guard reached out and took Li Zongbao's special permit. After examining it carefully for a moment, he smiled apologetically and said, "This is indeed the special permit of the Assembly Hall. It's not fake. If we don't even acknowledge the conference hall's special order and can't even be trusted, then who can? Fellow Taoists, please." After saying that, the city guard returned the special order to Li Zongbao and waved his hand to instruct the city guards guarding the city gate to move aside. What surprised Xiao Hua was that Li Zongbao, who was usually very arrogant, did not say much at this time. He coldly took the special order and led the way through the gap made by the city guards. When they passed through the city gate, a faint brilliance flashed between the city gates. Li Zongbao paused for a moment and waited for the brilliance to dissipate before he followed Xiao Hua and Xiao Mao out of Sky Patrol City. "Where's the flowing cloud flying ship?" Li Zongbao shouted as soon as he exited the city gate. "It's here." Xiao Hua hurriedly took out the flowing cloud flying ship. "Let's go." Li Zongbao flew onto the flying ship and said only one word. He stood with his hands behind his back and looked into the distance. Xiao Hua did not dare to be negligent. He urged the flying ship, and the 3 of them quickly rushed towards the northern sky. Behind them, several gazes swept past before slowly retracting. After flying for half a day, Li Zongbao did not say a word at all. When he saw flashes of lightning in the sky and ice pellets falling from the sky, Li Zongbao turned his head and ordered, "Xiao Mao, you take over from Xiao Hua. I have something to ask Xiao Hua." "Yes, I understand." Xiao Mao quickly walked in front of Xiao Hua and sat down cross-legged to take control of the flowing cloud flying ship. Xiao Hua walked in front of Li Zongbao and asked curiously, "Senior brother Li, what's the matter? You killed Tu Hong." Li Zongbao did not open his mouth and only transmitted his voice. However, this faint transmission and Li Zongbao's unquestionable tone were like a thunderclap that struck Xiao Hua's heart. Crack! Coincidentally, a bolt of lightning struck the left side of the flowing cloud flying ship. Xiao Hua's pupil shrank slightly, but then he smiled without changing his expression and said, "Senior brother Li, could it be that you want to take credit? Even if you want to take credit, you don't need to use me as bait." Although Xiao Hua looked as if nothing had happened, his heart was in a perilous situation. He definitely did not expect that someone would link him to Tu Hong's death, and this person was actually Li Zongbao. Therefore, although his reply sounded very calm, the words in his words could not stand up to scrutiny. However, Li Zongbao did not care about the inappropriateness of Xiao Hua's words. He stared straight into Li Zongbao's eyes and said indifferently, "I am very conflicted about Tu Fu's death. On one hand, he was a rare commander in our Dao sect. With his command, our Dao sect cultivators should be safe and sound before the nascent soul masters arrive. But on the other hand, he viewed human lives as grass and destroyed tens of thousands of lives in the blink of an eye. and junior brother Xiao and the others were also part of his scheme. Xiaohua fearlessly met Li Zongbao's aggressive gaze and also looked straight at him, quietly listening. Logically, I should protect him and ensure his safety. But emotionally, I want to kill him with my own hands. Of course, junior brother Xiao was tricked by him, and many of us were in danger. I also feel that it is normal for you to want to kill him. However, if it was only because of this, I feel that you would not be so impatient. It would be best to kill him after the battle. But what he should not have done the most was to scheme against Deity Qiming. Deity Qiming is Cui Hongshan's dual cultivation partner. Although the majority of cultivators do not know about this, it is not a secret to Golden Core cultivators. If you had not killed Tu Hong that day, Deity Qiming would have held the dual cultivation ceremony with Tu Hong with the support of the Snow Region's Taoist master. By the time the dual cultivation ceremony was held, everything would have been too late, right? Li Zongbao looked at Xiao Hua's eyes and a trace of warmth flashed through them. Therefore, you had no choice but to take the risk and kill Tu Hong before the dual cultivation ceremony. Hee, Brother Li is really imaginative. These little brothers would never dream of it. And you can even think of the things that my junior brother Cui would dream of. This little brother really admires you. How could Xiao Hua admit it? Naturally, he replied with a smile. Although Senior Tu Hong put us in danger, this little brother benefited from the disaster. Apart from Cui Hongshan's matter, this little brother can't thank him enough. Of course, this little brother was indeed angry about Deity Qiming's matter, but now that I think about it, Cui Hongshan was already dead and Deity Qiming had no one to rely on. Dual cultivation with Tu Hong was not a bad thing. Besides, Cui Hongshan has always been at odds with this little brother. In the Myriad Thunder Valley, he was also at odds with this little brother. He always made this little brother call him senior brother. Why would this little brother care about him? Junior brother Xiao, don't tell me that you don't know Tu Hong's true motive for marrying Deity Qiming. Li Zongbao's cheeks twitched as he asked with dissatisfaction. Oh, what other motive? This little brother really doesn't know? Xiao Hua asked curiously. Even if Deity Qiming is a human cauldron, it is still a rare opportunity for Deity Qiming. Looking at Xiao Hua's face that was as pure as Xintian true water, Li Zongbao really wanted to punch this guy's face. However, he still restrained himself and told Xiao Hua everything he knew. He then asked, think about it. If Deity Qiming married Tu Hong, what would happen to her? There is definitely only one outcome. Impossible. Xiao Hua's face was extremely shocked. Then, he waved his hand in disbelief. If Deity Qiming died, how could my Imperial Thunder Sect's Lord not know? Deity Qiming's natal spiritual tablet is still in the Jade Archive Hall. Hee, junior brother Xiao. When Deity Qiming marries into Sky Patrol City, her natal spiritual tablet will be handed over to Sky Patrol City. This is a valuable gift that your sect must give to Sky Patrol City during Deity Qiming's dual cultivation ceremony. It is said that the palace master of your Imperial Thunder Sect's Deity Lei Palace personally came to Sky Patrol City for this matter. However, because Tu Hong's scheme was exposed, she did not even get off the Thunderboat. Li Zongbao explained. Besides, Deity Qiming's soul was transferred into Yu Ming's body. How could Deity Qiming's natal spiritual tablet be damaged? This, Xiao Hua was just asking casually. When he heard this, he could only smile bitterly. This Tu Hong, I really did not expect him to be so shrewd. I am definitely not as shrewd as him. You really don't know? Li Zongbao laughed. That day, the assassin even took out Yu Ming's corpse. How about this? That's an assassin. That's a Golden Core realm cultivator. That's something that disciples like you who have backing can know. If it wasn't for brotherly mentioning it today, I would never have imagined that there would be so many fishy things about it. Xiao Hua naturally didn't admit it. Ha ha ha. Li Zongbao raised his face and laughed. Junior brother Xiao, if it was someone else, they would naturally not think that the swordsman who looks exactly like Qin Jian is you. However, don't forget that I am acquainted with Shuxia, her secret technique. See, Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air. He suddenly thought, isn't that right? I originally thought that only Fairy Hongxia knew about the sky-stealing sun-swapping secret technique. However, I forgot about Li Zongbao. He has seen Kaizhua Xiao before. That's not right. Xiaohua suddenly woke up again. Although Li Zongbao and Kaizhua Xiao were a couple, he had only seen Kaizhua Xiao's appearance after she changed her appearance. He didn't know Kaizhua Xiao's true appearance. He was tricking him. Sigh brotherly. After Xiao Hua recovered from his daze, he smiled bitterly. Don't be jealous of me. As the saying goes, the 9 sons of the dragon are all different. My fairy Hong Xia is as beautiful as a flower. Your Zhua Xia. Hee. She is actually not bad. Don't suspect me just because of this -8. Chapter 2485. Seeing Xiao Hua's astonishment, Li Zongbao was already satisfied. However, after hearing Xiao Hua's words, his eyes flashed with a trace of tenderness, but this tenderness was instantly extinguished by his indifference. Actually, these are not important, Li Zongbao said indifferently. These only show that you have the intention to assassinate Tu Hong. The most important thing is that you have the strength to assassinate Tu Hong. Moreover, you have the time to assassinate Tu Hong. Brother Li's words make me even more confused. Xiao Hua shrugged his shoulders. His expression seemed relaxed, but the mana in his body was constantly on high alert. The matter of him assassinating Tu Hong had really pierced through the heavens. He had directly stepped on the face of Shui Yu's spiritual master. Xiao Hua had already offended spiritual master Jingru. Now that Shui Yu's spiritual master knew the truth, did he still want to live? Master Shui Yu and Master Shui Yu were different. Master Shui Yu did not dare to brazenly go to Sky Thunder Peak, but Master Shui Yu dared to. He could even directly capture Xiao Hua and did not need to care about Master Qian Lazy of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Therefore, Xiao Hua did not dare to be careless, even if he was facing Li Zongbao, who he trusted more. Little Brother's cultivation is only at the early stage of foundation establishment. With the addition of my secret technique, I am at most at the late stage of foundation establishment. Even if I am at the early stage of gold core, it is still impossible for me to compare to Senior Tu Hong. Xiao Hua said innocently, if we are talking about Junior Brother Zhao's cultivation, how could others know more than me? Li Zongbao said with a smile, previously, Junior Brother Xiao was brave and invincible. You killed a weapon cultivator and a beast cultivator, and you also saved Xiao Mao from a sword cultivator. That terrifying phoenix name, you didn't get it for nothing, right? When Junior Brother Xiao used that technique, I'm afraid you didn't think about killing Tu Hong in the future, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have revealed it like this. Senior Brother Li. Seeing Li Zongbao speak so bluntly, Xiao Hua coldly said, if this little brother can kill Tu Hong, then Senior Martial Brother Li probably won't be a match for this little brother. Senior Martial Brother Li, are you not afraid that this little brother will kill you? I'm quite good at judging people. You are not the kind of person who willfully kills the innocent. In this point, Zhua Xia also said, back then, although you were only in the second layer of qi refining, she said your future was limitless. When I saw you for the second time, I was already aware of it. Li Zongbao seemed to really be at ease with Xiao Hua and spoke without hiding anything. Xiao Hua scratched his head and said very strangely, Brother Li, you're talking about so many strange things. This makes little brother puzzled. What does this have to do with me? Actually, I've been wondering about 2 things for the past 10 days or so. Li Zongbao did not answer Xiao Hua's question. Instead, he muttered to himself, there is no doubt that you can kill Tu Hong. But how could you transform into Qin Jian? Furthermore, you can actually use a sword array. Then the 64 flying swords that killed Tu Hong in the end, where did they come from? Ha ha ha, Xiao Hua laughed out loud. So Li Zongbao really did not know about Kaizhua Xia's secret technique. It was only because he saw that Fairy Hong Xia's beauty was far from Kaizhua Xia's that he lied to him. He then said, that was Qin Jian from the start, not me. How is it possible for Qin Jian to sneak into Sky Patrol City? Li Zongbao shook his head slightly. Do you think Shui Yu Dao Master is a golden core cultivator? Furthermore, that day was also strange. Why did Shui Yu Dao Master leave the city? Even until now, I still have not figured it out. Even my master can't explain it. Martial Uncle Hung Ming. Xiao Hua's face turned extremely ugly. If Li Zongbao was here to frighten him, he would not mind. But this matter actually involved Hung Ming. Do you think that you do things flawlessly? Li Zongbao saw Xiao Hua's expression change and said indifferently, do you think that the golden core cultivators in the meeting hall are all idiots? Do you think that after rescuing Xiao Mao and the Xuanyan school disciples from the Gale Snowfield's spirit stone vein, you can brush it off with just a few words of evasiveness? Humph. Not to mention my master, even Tu Hong. He is famous in the meeting hall for strategizing. I'm afraid that he would have long suspected your cultivation level. But you can rest assured that I have already told my master that I will not report a word of your actions to him. He also knows my painstaking efforts and did not interrogate me. He just said some of his own thoughts in front of me. What? Xiao Hua almost cried out in surprise. He really did not expect that his actions were so secretive, but he was still seen through by others. There is one more thing that I'm afraid you yourself did not think of. Li Zongbao glanced at Xiao Hua and said, when you finally escaped from under the nose of Shui Yu Dao Master, you used the Devil Sect movement technique. Shui Yu Dao Master had already seen through it. A few golden core cultivators, including my master, also received this news from Sky Patrol City. This news may be able to cover up something for you. But when it fell into my eyes, I could not help but think of the enmity between you and the Devil Sect cultivators on the way back to Sky Patrol City. Xiao Hua's face turned ugly. Hee, junior brother Xiao, you can rest assured. Li Zongbao said again, my master and a group of golden core cultivators are just suspicious of your cultivation. As for the matter of you killing Tu Hong, I'm afraid they have not contacted you yet. Of course, it is precisely because of the conflict between the golden core cultivators and Tu Hong, the representative of Sky Patrol City, that you are temporarily protected. This is only temporary. Whether you will be protected in the future is not something I can guess. I did not assassinate Tu Hong at all. Xiao Hua immediately denied. Li Zongbao still ignored him and said, of course, from the current situation, Tu Hong did not have time to report your performance in the meeting hall to Sky Patrol City. That is to say, Shui Yu Dao Master does not know that your cultivation is close to the middle stage of Golden Core. Otherwise, he would not have made such a big fuss. Instead, he would have gone directly to the Imperial Thunder Sect station to take you down. This is also the reason why I brought you out of Sky Patrol City last time and this time. At this time, he has not seen Tu Hong's jade slip, but he will see it sooner or later. As long as he sees that you are a threat to Tu Hong, and you are Cui Hongshan's senior brother, then you will definitely be in trouble. The teleportation formation in Sky Patrol City is heavily guarded. Shui Yu Dao Master's divine thought is left there. If you are noticed by him, I'm afraid there will be some twists and turns. Therefore, I can only bring you out of Sky Patrol City through the gate. The gate of Sky Patrol City is guarded by a golden core cultivator, so it is not dangerous. Oh, no wonder Li Zongbao was so patient just now. So that's why. Xiao Hua immediately thought of the situation when he was about to leave the city gate. If it was before, he would have been angry, right? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's heart warmed. However, he still could not admit it. He smiled and said, I am a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Even if Shui Yu Dao Master is a nascent soul cultivator, he can't ignore my identity as a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, right? Even if he sees me, he can't directly say that I am a sword cultivator, right? Hee, you should say this to Qian Mo. Li Zongbao sneered. Didn't you see Qian Mo's performance in the meeting hall? You killed many sword cultivators and brought back the corpses of the Imperial Thunder Sect cultivators. What was his attitude? Other than protesting, what else did he have? When you were forced to take out the flowing cloud flying boat, what was his attitude? Other than returning it, he could only let the younger generation solve it, right? Do you think he would offend Shui Yu Dao Master for you? It's good enough that he didn't sell you out. Moreover, don't have any illusions about Yanxi Prefecture. Don't forget that when Cui Hongshan and the others came back, all the Golden Core Masters knew about it. My master was also present. They interrogated Cui Hongshan and the others more than 10 times and almost searched their souls. They just wanted to know how they survived. But, did they mention Dui Qiming? My master told me clearly that he just wanted to see the Imperial Thunder Sect make a fool of themselves. He wanted to see how the Imperial Thunder Sect would explain to Tu Hong and Shui Dao Master. After all, that day in the meeting hall, Dui Qiming had already said that her lover was the surviving Cui Hongshan. But he didn't expect that Qian Mo actually dared to hide it from Cui Hongshan. He still wanted Dui Qiming to marry Tu Hong, and none of the Golden Core cultivators mentioned this matter. They all wanted to see how this so-called heaven-sent karma would end up. Even Xiaohua, regarding your sect's senior Qian Lazy, don't have too much hope. This matter, he might not be completely ignorant. Qian Mo, he might not have such big guts. To put it bluntly, he is just a messenger. He can only shirk responsibility when something happens. Xiao Hua looked at Li Zongbao with an uncertain expression. These words were what he suspected, and also what he didn't want to believe. But since Hung Feng said it, how could he not believe it? Actually, I don't need to say so much to you. But I'm really worried that you don't understand. Li Zongbao sighed at the end. These words. I'd rather rot in my stomach, but I have to say it to you today because I want to tell you that Xiaoyu mainland is not a simple place. This Sky Patrol City is a den of tigers and wolves. Now that you've left Sky Patrol City, then, don't ever step into Sky Patrol City again. Sigh. Xiaohua sighed and bowed. Thank you, Brother Li. Even if I'm not the one who killed Tu Hong, I'm really touched by Brother Li's frank and sincere words. No need. Li Zongbao waved his hand. A trace of sadness flashed in his eyes. Of course, when I bid farewell to Zhuo Xia, she also asked me to take care of you. But I didn't expect. It's only been a few decades, and I'm already unable to take care of you. Besides, in the future, Brother Li, in the future? Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. He felt that Li Zongbao's thoughts of loving the house, and he was very worried. Hee, it's nothing. Li Zongbao laughed. My cultivation method is going to improve again. You should be happy for me. Oh, yes, congratulations, Senior Brother Li. Xiao Hua didn't understand Li Zongbao's thoughts, so he could only cup his hands in respect. Also, if you and I are free after the war, do you have time to accompany me to Luyang? Li Zongbao raised his eyes and looked out of the flowing cloud-flying boat, seemingly casually asking. -8. Chapter 2486. The dark clouds rushed forward and countless ice pellets hit the airship's defense. The future of the airship was boundless. Li Zongbao sighed and said, Zhuo Xia is also the only one I can't let go of. Xiao Hua's heart trembled. He nodded and said, if Senior Brother has an order, how can this little brother dare to disobey? Li Zongbao didn't say anything else. It was as if he had said all the words he wanted to say in the past few years. Xiao Hua was sad. He thought a lot in his heart. What Li Zongbao said was a huge blow to him. He really didn't think that his disguise would be so weak. As long as he knew a little more about him, he would be able to guess that he was the one who killed Tu Hong. His sword cultivation would also appear in front of everyone. If Zhu Qinghe, Xie Zhiqian, or Chen Yi knew that Xiao Hua wasn't dead, they would be able to guess that he was a sword cultivator. Then, his disguise of killing Tu Hong wouldn't be much of a disguise. This young master has always wanted to hide and not expose some of his strength. But after all, with this kind of strength, there are many things that can't be concealed. And all the concealment is meaningless. Everything depends on strength. Xiao Hua sneered. Now that I have exposed some of my strength, it has fallen into the eyes of others. Fortunately, no one knows this young master's bottom line. Shui Yu's spiritual master? Although this young master can't win against him, if he wants to capture this young master, I'm afraid it won't be that simple. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's courage was boosted. He looked at Li Zongbao in front of him again. Li Zongbao's straight body, snow-white hair, and the pure words that were still beside his ear. Xiao Hua's heart surged with a trace of warmth. I'm afraid that this kind of love, this kind of sincerity, is where the light of this world lies. Also, according to Li Zongbao's words, it seems the improvement of his cultivation method is not a good thing. Xiao Hua's heart suddenly trembled. He immediately turned to look at Xiao Mao. Xiao Mao closed his eyes and concentrated on driving the airship. He didn't hear the sound transmission of the two at all. Xiao Mao. Xiao Hua transmitted. Do you know what cultivation technique senior martial brother Li Zongbao is practicing? Xiao Mao was slightly stunned. He opened his eyes and looked at Xiao Hua. He also sent a message to Xiao Hua. Senior brother Li Zongbao is the leader of the 3 kingdoms of cultivation. We all know his skills. It's said that it's the secret book of the Utopia faction, Li Qing's treasure mirror. Big brother. Oh, what's so special about this cultivation method? Xiao Hua didn't like the name of this cultivation method. Of course, I don't know the details, Xiao Mao said embarrassedly. However, the way of heaven is ruthless. If you want to get close to the way of heaven, you have to get rid of your human desires first. The Li Qing treasured mirror is said to be the skill that is closest to the way of heaven in the Utopia faction. The heavenly Tao is heartless, but cultivators have feelings. Just for the sake of pursuing the heavenly Tao, he had to cut off his lust? Is that still a cultivator? Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. However, since this cultivation method was the secret book of the Utopia faction, and Li Zongbao also relied on this cultivation method to achieve such a high cultivation, it could only mean that this cultivation method was effective. What could Xiao Hua say? Perhaps, after Li Zongbao went to Luyang and saw Kai Zhuoxia's corpse, he really abandoned the lust of a cultivator. Xiao Hua understood. Moreover, during this period, the indifference in Li Zongbao's eyes has become more and more. I'm afraid that his cultivation has improved greatly. That's probably why he said so much today. What does a cultivator look like without lust? An immortal? Xiao Hua suddenly thought of Ling Yunwu, who had transformed into a sword, and the dead Yuan. They seemed very similar to Li Zongbao and Kai Zhuoxia. Could it be that Li Zongbao will become an immortal with outstanding cultivation in the future? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua smiled and whispered, Senior brother Li, I encountered a strange thing in Sky Patrol City. Oh? What's the matter? Li Zongbao turned around. Although he was curious, his face was cold as he asked. Take a look and see what this is. Xiao Hua said and handed 2 storage bags to Li Zongbao. Oh? Li Zongbao scanned with his divine thought and frowned. Isn't this the corpse of a disciple of your Imperial Thunder sect? Why didn't you hand it over to the meeting hall? Brother Li, look at the other one, Xiao Hua said with a smile. Li Zongbao opened the other one and saw that it was a thunderbolt. He was even more puzzled. This thunderbolt is so damaged. Where did you get it? Ha ha ha. Xiao Hua laughed. It turns out that senior brother Li also has things that you don't know. It's not like I don't have divine foresight. How could I know so much? Li Zongbao replied with a smile. I got this from the Sky Patrol tea house. Xiao Hua didn't hide anything and told him about the Sky Patrol tea house. Ah? There's such a place? Xiao Hua didn't transmit his voice, so Xiao Mao also heard it clearly. Both of them exclaimed. Are you telling the truth? Li Zongbao's face was gloomy as if he was extremely angry. Of course. Xiao Hua raised his hand and said, if I didn't pay the spirit stones, how could they let me out? And the Utopia faction and the Xuanyan school also had cultivators participating. Humph, you shouldn't have taken out the spirit stones at that time. Li Zongbao said coldly, just kill them all. Who dares to say no? Heh heh. Xiao Hua smiled but didn't say anything. Oh. Li Zongbao suddenly realized something and looked at Xiao Hua meaningfully. Xiao Hua said again, I'm no match for them. Moreover, I'm afraid that this kind of dirty thing has been going on for a long time. If you kill these people, there will be others. You can't kill them all. Even so, you can't make a deal with the corpses of my Utopia faction's disciples. Li Zongbao sneered. At this time, I must investigate it personally and report it to the conference hall. Good. Xiao Hua saw that Li Zongbao was about to enter the trap. He clapped his hands and said, however, before you show off your invincible power, can you help me take a look at this thunderbolt? Why would I want to take a look at your broken thunderbolt? Li Zongbao said indifferently, this belongs to your Imperial Thunder sect. How would I know? Heh, can you not always say that it's broken? Xiao Hua said shamelessly, I exchanged it with a lot of spirit stones. I still want to use it. Stop dreaming. Li Zongbao snorted coldly. This thing is only used for war achievements. It's completely useless. No way, Xiaohua said with a wry smile. This thunderboat seems to be in good condition. Otherwise, why would I take out the spirit stones? To be honest, your Imperial Thunder Sect's thunderboat is still inferior to the 7 skill sect's flowing cloud flying boat in terms of refining techniques and ease of use. Li Zongbao pointed out the crux of the matter. However, the core of your thunderboat is different from the flowing cloud flying boat. It uses spirit stones to activate a simple thunder pool. The power of the thunder pool propels the flying boat. In this aspect, it's better than the flowing cloud flying boat. It's faster and has greater carrying capacity. A simple thunder pool? Xiaohua was stunned. He reached out to take the storage bag from Li Zongbao. Don't bother looking for it. Li Zongbao passed the 2 storage bags to Xiaohua. That simple thunder pool is the most important secret of your Imperial Thunder Sect's thunderboat. All the thunderboat's thunder pools have a self-destruct mechanism. Since this thunderboat is already useless, the thunder pool must be destroyed as well. Without the thunder pool, a thunderboat is nothing. Ha ha ha, Xiaohua laughed. It was not easy to make Li Zongbao say the word fart. This thunderboat is already useless. You can only use it to exchange for war achievements. Li Zongbao's face became cold again. He said, also, even if there is a thunder pool, it can only be used by people with thunder attribute physique. Oh, I forgot. Your Phoenix celestial body seems to be able to control heavenly lightning. I'm afraid it can also drive this thunderboat. However, a Phoenix celestial body of more than 400 zhong. Can this thunderboat hold anyone else? All right, Xiaohua shrugged. He took the storage bag and immersed his divine sense into the thunderboat. He said, it's good that senior brother knows. Don't hurt this little brother too much. That's not a small amount of spirit stones. Hee, the corner of Li Zongbao's mouth could not help but reveal a trace of smile. When Xiaohua immersed his divine sense into the thunderboat, he discovered that the entire thunderboat had an array that blocked divine sense. Xiaohua was unable to see the interior of the thunderboat. Forget it. When I have time, I will use my Dharma eyes to take a look. Xiaohua was somewhat disappointed. He kept the storage bag and looked at Li Zongbao. He said, little brother, how about repairing it? You want to repair it? Li Zongbao rolled his eyes at him and said, let's not talk about whether you know how to refine equipment. Even if you know how to refine equipment, do you have the Thunder Roll Stone to refine the Thunder Pool? Do you have the Jade Scroll to refine the Thunderboat? Forget it. You better exchange this Thunderboat for war achievements. Just say that this little brother and you found it together. The corpses of those Imperial Thunder Sect disciples should also be handed over. All right. Xiaohua nodded slightly. At this time, outside the flowing cloud flying ship that Li Zongbao had rented for 99 years, it seemed to be already night. Strong gales mixed with palm-sized snowflakes and thumb-sized ice particles hit the light barrier. The light constantly flickered, and the moonlight could not be seen. However, the surrounding dark white snow flickered faintly, illuminating the path in front of the 3 people. It seemed to be both dark and bright. This rarely seen snowy rain lasted for dozens of days. It was intermittent and continuous. On this day, endless red clouds flickered in the sky. Rumble. The sound of thunder rippled in the sky. The entire world was brightened and darkened by lightning. Li Zongbao, who was standing with his hands by his side, suddenly opened his eyes and roared angrily, "Don't you dare hurt my Dao sect disciples!" His figure immediately stood up and threw himself in front of the flying ship. Xiaomao, you take control of the flying ship. Big Brother will also go and take a look. Xiaohua's divine sense swept over. He clapped his hand and took the Yi-Yang fan in his hand. His figure also flew up. Yes, Xiaomao's heart was itching, but he still controlled the flying ship and flew behind the 2 people. A few miles ahead of the flying boat, there were 2 groups of enemies. One group consisted of more than 10 Taoist sect disciples who were a mix of foundation establishment and Qi refinement cultivators, while the other group consisted of more than 20 bright sword sect disciples. Nearly 40 people were fighting together, and it was obvious that the cultivators were at a disadvantage. At this time, Xiaohua did not pay much attention to this kind of fight between sword sect and cultivator. If it was a normal day, he would only let Xiaomao come out, and he would sit leisurely on the flowing cloud flying ship. However, he had to come out personally. This was because half of the Tao sect disciples were from the Utmost Happiness faction, and the other half were from the Imperial Thunder sect. -8. Chapter 2487. Li Zongbao shouted, "Don't hurt my Taoist sect's disciples," and rushed into the battle. Before he arrived, the disciples of the Utopia faction shouted, "Uncle Li is here. We are saved." The morale of the disciples of the Utopia faction was greatly boosted. Even the disciples of the Imperial Thunder faction were overjoyed. The yellow talismans and magic weapons in their hands shone brightly. Since he was facing more than 10 swordsmen, Li Zongbao waved his celestial piercing whip again. Almost 20 whip shadows were displayed accurately. They flashed and whistled in the snowy sky, completely messing up the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. The ice particles and snowflakes within a radius of several hundred feet were stirred up and sent flying. This power was actually much stronger than before he returned to the Sky Patrol City. Xiao Huafei, who was behind him, saw the layers of whip shadows. The magic power on each of the whip shadows was condensed. As the runes on them circulated, they absorbed the spiritual chi of heaven and earth in a frenzy. Xiao Huafei narrowed his eyes slightly. Although he had obtained an opportunity in the past 5 years, and his magic power had greatly improved, Li Zongbao seemed to be improving all the time. Now that he had reached the peak of the Foundation establishment stage, Li Zongbao was not far behind. Attack! Seeing Li Zongbao's might, the 20 or so sword cultivators were shocked. They all abandoned their opponents and glanced at each other. Sword energy circulated within their bodies, and the flying swords in their hands went to meet Li Zongbao's immortal piercing whip. The flying swords were either dotted with stars, falling rain, blooming flowers, or lush green bamboos. All of them transformed. Rumble. The 20 whip shadows hit the celestial piercing whip almost at the same time. The spiritual chi exploded, and the flying sword screamed. The huge airwave even sent everyone flying. In the airwave, several flying swords screamed and fell diagonally. They were defeated in one hit and could no longer fight. Li Zongbao, who was resisting the 20 swordsmen alone, was also suddenly sent flying. The Taoist robe on the arm that held the celestial piercing whip was completely gone. Pieces of the robe turned into butterflies and flew into the sky. Soon after, they were swept into the night sky. Looking at Li Zongbao's bare arms, a faint brilliance flashed. It was a protective restriction. Hiss! The true essence in Li Zongbao's entire body was in disarray, almost out of control. As he did his utmost to operate his heart technique to collect his true essence, he was still somewhat regretful. Compared to Xiao Hua, I'm still lacking by quite a bit. As it turned out, Li Zongbao had gone head-on against more than 20 drawn swordsmen, and actually, he wanted to compete with Xiao Hua. If Xiao Hua knew what Li Zongbao was thinking, wouldn't he be so cocky? Io, Senior Li. Xiao Hua scanned Li Zongbao with his divine sense and saw that his face was pale gold, and there were even traces of blood at the corner of his mouth. He was a little shocked, as he didn't know why Li Zongbao was so reckless today. He hurriedly shouted, "Senior brother, don't panic. Little brother will help you." Just as Xiao Hua shouted, the disciples of the Utmost Happiness faction and the Imperial Thunder faction, who were slower than the sword cultivator, once again activated their magic weapons and attacked the defeated sword cultivator. They wanted to take advantage of the situation and beat the sword cultivator while he was down. Nothing. Li Zongbao took a deep breath and suppressed his true core strength. He looked at the Yang Li fan in Xiao Hua's hand and frowned. Obviously, he didn't think highly of this so-called magic weapon. You and I each take 10. Let's see who can finish killing them first. Oh. Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and was about to speak when he saw Li Zongbao's figure spread out again. The holy whip in his hand stretched out slightly, and with a whoosh, it rushed toward the 2 sword cultivators closest to him like a yellow dragon. What is Li Zongbao doing? Xiao Hua was even more puzzled. This was a little different from the previous Li Zongbao. However, Xiao Hua waved the Yang Li fan as well, causing a flaming dragon to sweep up and charge towards the 2 sword cultivators that were attacking the disciples of the Imperial Lightning sect. He said in high spirits, "It's as you said. killing people without blinking an eye. The disciples of the Imperial Thunder faction and the Utmost Happiness faction were fighting fiercely, so maybe they didn't hear it. However, Xiao Mao, who was driving the flowing cloud flying boat in the distance, heard it clearly. He had goosebumps all over his body. Damn it, Big Brother is a poet. These two sentences really rhymed. Although Xiao Hua's Yang Li fan was only a magic weapon, that fire dragon was not inferior to the holy whip in the slightest. In this snowy region where the fire attribute spiritual chi of heaven and earth was not abundant, that fire dragon flew to the two sword cultivators and had already absorbed a lot of spiritual chi of heaven and earth. It expanded to several feet in size and wrapped around the two sword cultivators in an instant. Buzz. The two sword cultivators were somewhat caught off guard and hurriedly withdrew their flying swords. They first protected their own bodies and then tried to counterattack. However, that fire dragon was far more intense than they thought. The tiny flames were like small tentacles that completely covered the sword light. With a sizzling sound, it was as if cold water was poured into hot oil. All of the sword light was eroded by the fire. The two sword cultivators hurriedly urged their sword origins to resist the fire with all their might. Xiao Hua stretched out his hand and took out a magic staff that was as thick as a bull's mouth. His figure swept through the air, and he didn't pay attention to the two sword cultivators at all. He raised his head and smashed the third sword cultivator. This person, isn't he too fierce? The third sword cultivator's sword light was somewhat strange. It was like a huge mountain. When the huge sword danced, the sword light smashed down like a mountain. The heavy sword light also carried the sharpness of the sword light. He also had the same thought as all the sword cultivators who had fought with Xiao Hua. At the same time, he also sneered in his heart like all the sword cultivators who had fought with Xiao Hua. He unsheathed his huge sword, and the mountain mixed with the sharpness rushed over. Rumble. A loud sound rang out. This loud sound was even more shocking than the sound of Li Zongbao fighting against the 20 sword cultivators before. And this sword cultivator also ended up together with all the sword cultivators who had fought with Xiao Hua. That seemingly majestic mountain was smashed apart by Xiao Hua's magic staff. That snow-white sword light collapsed like an avalanche. Soon after, it was like a myriad of dandelions that spread their wings and escaped far away. That huge sword was actually shattered by Xiao Hua's magic staff. There was no most fierce, only more fierce. This sword cultivator's huge sword was shattered, and his own primordial spirit was also injured. His sword origin stagnated and fell from the sky. That clever thunder-controlling sect disciple swung his hand and shot out more than 10 lightning talismans, trapping this injured sword cultivator. That disciple even rubbed his body and rushed forward. A black lightning seal flickered as lightning threads rushed towards the sword cultivator's chest. Xiao Hua was delighted in his heart. His figure flashed, and he grew more than 1 zhang tall. His left hand grabbed and formed a lightning-attracting technique. Once again, he drew a line in the air. Kacha! Several thick lightning lights appeared out of thin air. They flickered with a sinister appearance and hit the 4 sword cultivators who had drawn their swords within several zhang in front of Xiao Hua. This lightning light was really too fast. The sword cultivators who had drawn their swords didn't have time to defend. 2 of them were struck in the forehead and immediately fell from the sky with a blood-curdling scream. The other 2 hastily dodged in panic and barely avoided their vital points. That lightning light hit their backs. However, how could these 2 sword cultivators withstand Xiao Hua's heavenly lightning? That lightning light not only tore apart the defense on their backs, it also deeply penetrated their bodies. As their flesh was torn open, countless purple lightning lights also spread all over their bodies. The 2 sword cultivators clenched their teeth as if they wanted to resist this unbearable pain. They even tried their best to urge their sword origin to resist the sword light that was corroding their sword origin. However, they only saw a black shadow sweep past them. Another black magic staff flashed past, and the magic staff accurately hit the top of their heads. As the corpses of the 2 sword cultivators fell to the ground, the fire dragon that Xiao Hua had driven with his son Li Fan earlier also destroyed the defensive sword lights of the 2 sword cultivators. That powerful magic power drove the scorching flames to attack the corpses of the two sword cultivators. The sword energy of the two sword cultivators only lasted for a few breaths of time before their corpses were completely burned. Although their corpses didn't turn into charcoal, they lost their balance and fell to the ground. They also suffered the same fate as the last two sword cultivators. The disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect were in an uproar. The disciples of the Utmost Happiness faction also cried out in surprise. Xiaohua killing these 5 sword cultivators was really too beautiful, not to mention how profound Xiaohua's magic power was and how meticulous his control of the magic weapon was. Just the way he flew over like moving clouds and flowing water without stopping to rest. The corpses of the 5 sword cultivators fell from the sky at practically the same time. Moreover, the spells he used were all different. This simply surpassed Li Zongbao, who was known as the number 1 person below the Golden Core stage. Because at this moment, although Li Zongbao also effortlessly killed 4 sword cultivators with his immortal piercing whip, not only was he 1 sword cultivator inferior to Xiaohua in terms of numbers, his methods were also lacking. The 4 sword cultivators all used the same move, the immortal piercing whip swinging down. Countless whip shadows fell down with earth-shattering momentum, directly knocking away the sword cultivators' flying swords and smashing the sword cultivators' corpses. Besides this move, there was nothing else. Huff, huff. After Xiaohua finished killing the 5th sword cultivator, he immediately panted. He flipped his hand and threw a medicinal pill into his mouth. He pointed with his finger and said, "Junior brothers, the rest is up to you. I've already done my best." Yes, the spirits of many Imperial Thunder sect disciples were greatly roused. With a senior brother who could compare to Li Zongbao by their side, they naturally couldn't show weakness. Each of them was much more ferocious than before. Under the surge of their magic power, they reversed their previous decline in one fell swoop and suppressed the sword cultivators' attacks. Killing all of the sword cultivators was only a matter of time. Huff, huff. Xiaohua looked on proudly. He pretended to be pale, and his figure once again slowly flew back. Over there, Xiao Mao had already put away the flowing cloud-flying ship. He took out his Dharma treasure and hovered in midair. Li Zongbao was different from Xiaohua. His hands were extremely ruthless. After killing 4 sword cultivators, he still wasn't willing to stop. As the shadows of his whip danced, several sword cultivators lost their lives one after another. And with the harvest of one life after another, Li Zongbao's magic power became increasingly smooth. The immortal piercing whip also whistled happily. Even in Li Zongbao's already faint eyes, there was a hint of human radiance. Senior brother Li is indeed powerful. Xiao Mao also saw the difference, and said very enviously, "Junior brother's master once said that using killing to stop killing is the highest Tao, and using killing to cultivate is the Tao of cultivation. Junior brother has always been unable to attain the Samadhi realm, but senior brother Li seems to have already mastered this Tao." Bullshit. Xiaohua originally wanted to say bullshit, but when he remembered that it was Xiao Mao's master who said it, he hurriedly covered it up. You don't want to walk the great Tao that leads to the heavens, but instead choose to walk the path of bloodthirst? Senior brotherly, isn't this a bit inappropriate? -8. Chapter 2488. Xiao Mao shook his head slightly. I don't think it's inappropriate. Big brother, don't you see? This holy piercing whip is the Utopia faction's killing weapon. Senior brother Li can only skillfully activate the holy piercing whip now, but he hasn't really integrated with the holy piercing whip yet. If he reaches that step one day, I'm afraid he won't be far from the great Tao. Is that so? Xiaohua was a little confused, but then he smiled bitterly. The Utopia faction has been around for so many years. They naturally have nascent soul stage elders and spirit-severing stage elders. Li Zongbao is their pride. How can they destroy their own wall? Using killing to refine one's nature is also a great Tao from ancient times. There must be a great reason behind it. Kill? Xiaohua was thinking, but he heard Li Zongbao's voice like spring thunder. With a roar, the holy piercing whip suddenly expanded. It didn't draw out any whip shadows. The runes on the holy piercing whip swelled, and it lashed out at the 10th swordsman. Before the holy piercing whip could hit that cultivator, a few feet away, his whole body flashed with brilliance, and the protective sword chi quickly dissipated. That swordsman didn't turn his flying sword to attack Li Zongbao, and the holy piercing whip firmly knocked him into the air. And from beginning to end, the holy piercing whip didn't touch that swordsman at all. Good. The disciples of the Utopia faction shouted loudly. Li Zongbao's move had suppressed Xiao Hua in an instant. In the hearts of the disciples of the Utopia faction, Li Zongbao was still the pride of the Utopia faction. He wasn't someone Xiao Hua of the Imperial Thunder sect of the country of Shi could compare to. These nearly 20 bright swordsmen didn't have high ranks. Their bright sword 1st grade to bright sword 4th grade weren't considered tough bones. After Xiao Hua and Li Zongbao jointly killed 15 of them, the remaining few sword cultivators had long been flustered. They were surrounded by more than 10 cultivators. After another 2 were killed, the remaining 2 swordsmen risked their injuries and tried to break out of the encirclement by stepping on their flying swords. However, even though their idea was good, they were surrounded by more than 10 cultivators after all. How could it be so easy to escape? With a single glance, Xiao Hua knew that the 2 of them were most likely doomed. However, right at this moment, Li Zongbao tossed the immortal piercing whip into the air once more. With a buzzing sound, the immortal piercing whip transformed into a rainbow and struck down one of the swordsmen. The sword light surrounding the swordsman was completely shattered, and the magic tools of the 2 cultivators immediately took the life of the swordsman. As for the last sword cultivator, he was even worse off. His eyes trembled as he looked at the majestic, immortal piercing whip. He was struck by the magical artifacts of more than 10 cultivators and died. Seeing Li Zongbao's state of mind, Xiao Hua couldn't help but shake his head. Greetings, senior brother. The dozen or so cultivators were divided into 2 groups. About 6 or 7 disciples from the Imperial Thunder sect rushed over and bowed. Thank you, senior brother, for saving our lives. May I know which Thunder Palace you are from? Although they saw that Xiao Hua's cultivation hadn't even reached the middle stage of foundation establishment, who still dared to call him junior brother. Hee, this Xiao is a disciple of the Thunder Palace's myriad Thunder Valley. My name is Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua smiled and cupped his hands in return. Oh, so it's the Thunder Palace's senior brother Xiao. When those disciples heard that Xiao Hua wasn't a disciple of the Heavenly Thunder Palace, they were even more delighted. One by one, they rushed to announce their names, seemingly wanting to befriend him. Damn it, this job really isn't something an ordinary person can do. Xiao Hua listened to each name and nodded with a smile on his face. However, his brain, which could remember jade slips and cultivation methods in the blink of an eye, was unable to remember these strange names. Nonsense. If it was Dui Qiming and Dui Lingba, they both had the same Dui. Only the last 2 words were different. Some even only had a single word difference. Even Qian and Mo had 2 different words. This basically didn't have any meaning. How could Xiao Hua remember it? Perhaps only that guy Cui Hongshan has this kind of amazing ability. Xiao Hua muttered in his heart. This ability. This young master can't catch up to him in this lifetime. When everyone had announced their names, everyone looked at Xiao Hua with a smile, seemingly somewhat expectant. Xiao Hua blinked his eyes. How strange. He was somewhat puzzled. Seeing Xiao Hua's bewilderment, a quick-witted disciple said in a low voice, Senior brother Xiao, these are close to 20 bright swordsmen. They're storage pouches. Oh, I understand. Xiao Hua, who was confused by the numerous names, suddenly came to his senses. He pointed his finger and said, You. Oh, Kuan Peng, the disciple who spoke said with a smile, Senior brother Xiao, what instructions do you have? I'll have to trouble junior brother Kuan Peng to bring those storage pouches over. Xiao Hua instructed, Bring them all over. Kuan Peng was a little hesitant. He whispered again, Senior brother Xiao only killed 5 swordsmen. We will only take the storage pouches of those 5 swordsmen. The rest will be distributed by the cultivators of the Utopia faction. If I tell you to go, then go. Xiao Hua's tone was very unyielding, without a doubt. Good boy. Those are the cultivators of the Utopia faction. That's Li Zongbao. Kuan Peng almost stuck out his tongue. However, since Xiao Hua had instructed, Kuan Peng obediently flew down. First, he took the storage pouches of the 5 swordsmen killed by Xiao Hua. Then, he looked at the cultivators of the Utopia faction. Originally, a disciple flew out, but seeing that the Imperial Thunder faction's disciple had gone first, that disciple obediently stopped in midair. Thus, Kuan Peng didn't hold back. He took all the storage pouches in his hand and flew in front of Xiao Hua. Go, give these storage pouches to that Utopia faction's disciple. Split them in half in front of him. Xiao Hua said casually. This can be done. Kuan Peng's face was full of joy, and the other cultivators of the Imperial Thunder faction were overjoyed. They could calculate the difference in the number of people even with their heals. Sure enough, Kuan Peng took the storage pouches and divided the things in half a meal's time. The Utopia faction's disciple was obviously surprised, but when he turned his head and said a few words, his face was even more stunned. He took the storage pouches handed over by Kuan Peng with a wry smile. The 10 swordsmen were killed by Li Zongbao. Li Zongbao himself didn't have any objections, so what could he say? Besides, Li Zongbao had never divided things with them. They each got a storage pouch of the swordsmen. What else was there to be unhappy about? It was just that they were not used to it. It was probably the first time that they compromised with the disciples of the Imperial Thunder faction, which was not considered a first-class cultivation faction. Kuan Peng happily took the storage pouches and handed them to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua couldn't compare to Li Zongbao, so he used his divine thought to check if there was anything special. Then, he smiled and said, "You can divide it by yourself. I don't want it." Really? Kuan Peng and the others were even more surprised. This was really, once again, beyond their expectations. Senior Xiao, these are the cultivators you killed. If you don't take some, our faces will be red. Forget it, take one more. Xiao Hua pointed to Xiao Mao next to him. Leave one for the junior of the Xuanyan school. Okay. Kuan Peng knew that Xiao Mao came with Li Zongbao and Xiao Hua, so he didn't dare to neglect it. After distributing it nimbly, he asked, Senior Xiao, where are you going? Oh, I and the others are going. At this point, Xiao Hua couldn't help laughing. Until now, he still didn't know where Li Zongbao was taking him. I'm going to the Huan country with Senior Li Zongbao. Xiao Hua covered it up. So it's like this. Kuan Peng blinked his eyes and whispered, Senior Xiao, we are here to ask for help. If you have time, please go to the 7 Extremes Mountains. Oh, why? Xiao Hua was surprised. My Imperial Thunder sect was sent to the 7 Extremes Mountains to attack the sword cultivators guarding there. However, before we reached the 7 Extremes Mountains, we encountered a lot of sword cultivators and beast cultivators. Among the sword cultivators, there was an illusory swordsman, which was quite powerful. My Imperial Thunder sect suffered heavy losses. Therefore, we were sent back to ask for help from the conference hall of the Sky Patrol City, and to see if there are any disciples of my Imperial Thunder sect or disciples of other sects nearby to ask for help. As he spoke, Kuan Peng looked at the Utopia faction and whispered, Senior Li Zongbao of the Utopia faction is famous. If he can take the disciples there, it will be a great help. Xiao Hua frowned slightly and asked puzzledly, Isn't Junior Kuan with the disciples of the Utopia faction? What are they doing? Kuan Peng was embarrassed. He looked at the other disciples next to him and smiled apologetically. We are the last group of disciples to go to the 7 Extremes Mountains. Heh, because we left late, we didn't encounter the ambush. Instead, we met a junior who escaped from the ambush. Therefore, we didn't go to the 7 Extremes Mountains and flew out to ask for help first. However, we encountered sword cultivators nearby. When we retreated, we also encountered the disciples of the Utopia faction who were being chased by swordsmen. In fact, we didn't know them at all. Oh, I see. Xiao Hua nodded. At this time, Li Zongbao also flew out from the crowd. Greetings, Senior Li Zongbao. Kuan Peng and the others didn't dare to neglect and hurried forward to greet him. Okay. Li Zongbao casually made an obeisance and said to Xiao Hua, Junior Xiao, have you finished your business? My disciples of the Utopia faction were ambushed by sword cultivators in the Flowing Ice Valley. Can you go to the Flowing Ice Valley with me now? This, Xiao Hua hesitated. He was in the same team as Li Zongbao, so he had to listen to Li Zongbao's orders. However, the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect were also in trouble. I'll let Senior Li Zongbao know. Kuan Peng was very clever. When he saw that even Li Zongbao wanted to invite Xiao Hua, he hurriedly made an obeisance and said, "My disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect were also ambushed by sword cultivators in the Seven Extremes Ridge. My senior Xiao." "Oh, I see." Li Zongbao nodded slightly and said, "In this case, Junior Xiao, if you want to go to the Seven Extremes Ridge, take Xiao Mao with you now. Time is tight. I also have to go to the Flowing Ice Valley. When the two battles are over, we'll meet again." "Okay, thank you for your understanding, Senior Li." Xiao Hua was relieved. He looked at Xiao Mao and said, "Let me drive the Flowing Cloud flying boat and follow Senior Li. My flying speed is fast, so I don't need it." "Okay." Li Zongbao glanced at Xiao Mao and nodded. "Then Xiao Mao will follow me." Immediately, Li Zongbao didn't delay. He took out a jade slip and gave it to Xiao Hua. He asked Xiao Mao to release the flying boat and flew away with Xiao Mao. The disciples of the Utopia faction were still flying in the direction of the Sky Patrol City. -8. Chapter 2489. Seeing this, Xiao Hua hurriedly ordered Kuan Peng and the others, "You all follow the Utopia faction disciples. It's always good to have more people. I'll go to the Seven Extremes Mountains myself." "Senior brother Xiao, be careful." Kuan Peng knew what Xiao Hua said was reasonable. He recorded the approximate location of the Seven Extremes Mountains in a jade slip and gave it to Xiao Hua. Then, he led 7 disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect to chase after the Utopia faction disciples. Xiao Hua knew the situation was urgent. He didn't dare to be negligent. He immersed his divine thought into the jade slip and activated the Imperial Thunder travel. Thunder roared around him as he flew into the distance. After flying for several days, he encountered several groups of sword cultivators. However, Xiao Hua only whistled past without paying them any attention. Those sword cultivators were also greatly shocked. A few of the more experienced ones, upon seeing Xiao Hua's fleeting figure and the swaying thunder in the air, had long since changed their expressions. Some even shrunk their necks and hurriedly flew to other places, no longer daring to approach the direction Xiao Hua was heading. Today, at noon, several towering mountain peaks could be seen rising up from the snowy lands. If these mountain peaks were placed anywhere else in the country of Xi, they would be considered normal. However, after being used to the snowy lands of the highlands, it was natural for them to be surprised by the sight of these mountains. "Oh, is this the Seven Extremes Mountains?" Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He was about to take out the jade slip. At this moment, a divine thought swept past behind him. "Who is it?" Xiao Hua was startled. His flying speed immediately slowed down, and his divine sense also swept over. However, when his divine sense crossed 5 kilometers, he suddenly realized something and immediately stopped. He clapped his hand and took out the yang leaf fan. Magic power surged from his body, and he took out a vigilant stance. As for that divine sense, it swept past Xiao Hua and immediately locked onto him. After half a meal, a cultivator in the middle stage of the Golden Core realm hurried over from a distance. Xiao Hua also knew this cultivator. Isn't this Martial Uncle Kuan Shui of the Earth Thunder Palace?" Xiao Hua's divine thought swept over and recognized Kuan Shui. He immediately withdrew his divine thought and waited respectfully in the air. Kuan Shui had left a good impression on Xiao Hua when he was at the Imperial Thunder Sect's encampment in the Sky Patrol City. Xiao Hua's attitude was also humble. "Xiao Hua, why are you here?" Kuan Shui flew closer and asked in surprise, "Didn't you go back to Sky Thunder Peak with Cui Hongshan and the others?" "I'll let Martial Uncle Kuan know that I'm now under the command of Senior Martial Brother Li Zongbao. I'm in the same team as Senior Martial Brother Li." "Oh, Li Zongbao?" Kuan Shui was surprised. "Isn't he a disciple of the Utopia faction?" "Yes, Li Zongbao has used the special order of the meeting hall to transfer this junior to serve under him." Xiao Hua cut the long story short and asked again, "Junior just killed those who followed Senior Martial Brother Li Zongbao to the side, but I met Kuan Peng of the Earth Thunder Palace." He said that the disciples who went to the Seven Extremes Mountains were ambushed by Huan Nation swordsmen, so Junior came alone to help. When Marshal Kuan saw this, he frowned and scolded. Nonsense. You are only at the middle foundation establishment stage. How can you come to the Seven Extremes Ridge as you please? If you follow Li Zongbao, you might feel wronged, but at least your life is guaranteed. You are the heroes of the Imperial Thunder Sect. When you return to the Sky Thunder Peak, you will be praised by the sect leader. You can't be too careless. Yes, Junior was worried about my fellow apprentices at that time, so I didn't think too much. Xiao Hua felt warm in his heart and smiled apologetically. Where is Li Zongbao? Marshal Kuan asked curiously. You are here. Why didn't he come? If he comes, the Imperial Thunder Sect will have another good helper. Uncle Kuan, the Utopia faction was also ambushed by swordsmen. Senior Marshal brother Li Zongbao was busy rescuing their disciples. Xiao Hua smiled apologetically. By the way, did Uncle Kuan also receive Kuan Ping's call for help? Ha, ha, I didn't meet Kuan Pong, it was other disciples. Marshal Kuan looked ahead and asked curiously, Xiao Hua, didn't you go to the Seven Extremes Mountains? Why are you here? Xiao Hua was speechless. He clapped his hands, took out a jade slip and handed it to Marshal Kuan. He smiled apologetically and said, Junior took Kuan Ping's jade slip and flew here. I'm afraid it flew wrong? Oh? Marshal Kuan took the jade slip and looked at it. He smiled and said, You are not wrong. Kuan Peng remembered it wrongly. He has no sense of direction. If you listen to him, you will still have to fly back to Sky Patrol City. Yes, I understand. Xiao Hua was relieved when he heard that he didn't fly wrong. Let's go. I am going to the Seven Extremes Mountains to get out of trouble. Follow me. Marshal Kuan smiled and said, However, you have to stay close to me. Don't be more than 100 feet away, or else I am afraid I can't take care of you. Yes, I understand. Xiao Hua replied happily. It was rare for him to meet such a warm-hearted senior. Marshal Kuan scanned the area with his divine thought and pointed with his finger. He said, In front of us is the Prison Dragon Ridge, not the Seven Extremes Mountains. However, it is not far from the Prison Dragon Ridge. Kuan Peng just pointed the way a little off. Yes, senior, please lead the way. I will follow you. Xiao Hua said respectfully, All right, follow this old man. Marshal Kuan waved his sleeves and took the lead to fly towards the mountain peaks that towered into the sky. Xiao Hua followed behind Marshal Kuan with a smile on his face. Oh, Xiao Hua, how are Dui Qiming and Cui Hongshan? I just got the news that day and thought, cough, cough, there are some things that are not appropriate for me to say. Marshal Kuan asked with a smile. I'll let Marshal Uncle Kuan know, Xiao Hua honestly reported. Junior sister Dui and junior brother Cui have already reconciled. After all, the two of them have experienced life and death together, and they've already seen through many things. Since the two of them can be together, some trivial things don't matter. That's good. Marshal Kuan's flying speed was still very fast, more than 20% faster than an ordinary Gold Core practitioner. However, he was still relaxed as he asked, in addition, this is just the beginning. The words of the three disciples of the Earth Thunder Palace that day were only seen by ordinary people. The matter of Dui Qiming and Tu Hong will definitely spread throughout the Dawn Rain continent after the sword battle. Yes, even the entire Imperial Thunder Sect knows about it now. They will have to face many things in the future. Alas, yes. Xiao Hua sighed slightly. When he gave the male and female Thunder Beast cores to the two of them in the Pill Refining Cave, wasn't this also his intention? Especially, to let Cui Hongshan and Dui Qiming dual cultivate at that time. This could also be considered a big gift from Xiao Hua to Cui Hongshan. If not for this, when they returned to Sky Thunder Peak, how could the myriad Thunder Valley, which had always been weak, face those meaningless rumors and slanders? Two middle-stage foundation establishment cultivators. Perhaps it could make others stop gossiping. Seeing that Xiao Hua was also flying and answering him at the same time, and not much slower than him, Marshal Kuan's face showed a surprised expression. At the same time, he activated his spiritual power and secretly increased his flying speed. He seemed to want to see if Xiaohua could catch up with him. At this time, Xiaohua was also somewhat worried. He couldn't help but think about how eldest senior brother and master would treat this matter when they returned to the myriad Thunder Valley. Gradually, the two of them flew into the mountain ridge, their figures disappearing between several towering peaks. Rumble, there was a series of earth-shaking sounds. Countless spiritual energy of heaven and earth rushed out from Prison Dragon Ridge. Several hurricanes rushed into the air, sweeping away all the white snow between the mountains. Waves of energy also spread out to the surroundings of Prison Dragon Ridge. Just a few li away from Prison Dragon Ridge, the waves of energy swept through the air. A burst of brilliance flickered slightly and quickly disappeared. Martial Uncle Kuin, what is the meaning of this? Inside Prison Dragon Ridge, in the middle of several towering mountains, Xiaohua fell on the bare ground and coldly asked Martial Kuin, who had a happy expression on his face. Haha, at this time. What do you want to do for this old man? Are you stupid? Martial Kuin laughed maniacally. He slapped his hand and took out a palm-sized, golden magic bottle from his storage bag. Under the stimulation of his magic power, a golden flame gradually appeared on the magic bottle. Xiaohua slowly climbed up from the ground and very calmly patted the dirt off his body. He stared at Martial Kuin with narrowed eyes. Just now, he followed Kuin Pong into Prison Dragon Ridge. When he just arrived at this open space, he saw Kuin Ping's magic power surging around his body and his hands continuously forming seals. He thought that he was ambushed by some sword cultivator. Just when he released his divine sense to check the enemy's whereabouts, he felt 4 waves of magic power coming from all around the valley. The waves were like a net that intertwined in the air and instantly covered him from top to bottom. An unparalleled force pulled him down from the air and smashed him straight to the ground. Fortunately, Xiaohua's skin was rough and his flesh was thick. After smashing the rocks on the ground, he didn't suffer any injuries. It was just that his robe was dirty. He felt that in this inexplicable array, a huge force seemed to exist in the air, pressing down on him from top to bottom. His body felt as if it was solidified and filled with magma. It was difficult for him to move his hands and feet. Xiaohua hurriedly released his Buddhist sense. He first checked under his feet. When he saw that there were strong waves in the rocks, his heart couldn't help but thump. He knew that the earth escape technique was probably not easy to use. Then, he looked at the left side of the valley. The entire valley was filled with strong waves. It should be the range of the array. Martial Kuin's body was suffused with a faint brilliance that shielded the waves. Xiaohua's eyes narrowed, and he said coldly, "This junior doesn't know when this junior offended Martial Uncle." It actually made Martial Uncle spend so much effort to lure this junior here. That Kuin Pong is probably Martial Uncle Kuin's nephew, right? Martial Kuin didn't pay attention to him. He slowly urged his magic power. The fireball in his hand became bigger and bigger. The golden light also penetrated several zhang. Xiaohua knew that he couldn't get any information from Martial Kuin. He coldly snorted, "Relying on this bullshit array. You want to trap this young master? Martial Kuin, you're too imaginative." As he spoke, Xiaohua's magic power surged and gradually let out a thunderous sound. His figure flew up and rushed towards Martial Kuin. At the same time, Xiaohua waved his hand and wanted to take out the magic wand. -8. Chapter 2490. Who would have thought that just as Xiaohua rushed up a few feet, an incomparably huge force was born from the fluctuations, firmly suppressing him. It was as if a huge boulder was pressing down on his shoulder, smashing him to the ground again. And when he landed with a plop, the huge force reduced and returned to the same state as before. What surprised Xiaohua the most was not this. He waved his hand and took out the devil's staff from the space. However, the devil's staff that was previously like a wooden stick was now as heavy as a mountain. Almost as soon as it touched Xiaohua's finger, it immediately slipped from Xiaohua's hand and fell on the rock along with Xiaohua's body. Ha ha ha, seeing Xiaohua's sorry state, Martial Kuin could not help but laugh. "I heard that your lightning escape technique was successful and you were born with divine strength. How about it? In this array, what use do you have?" Xiao Hua's face was gloomy as he looked at the magic bottle in Marshal Kuen's hand. The golden flame gradually solidified and a terrifying aura was emitted from the flame. Even a middle gold core stage cultivator had to store up power to activate it. Everyone knew how powerful this flame was. What kind of array is this? Why is it so strange? Xiao Hua clapped his hand and took out the Yi-Yang fan. Within his meridians, there was very little true essence. Strangely, it was not restricted by this array. I'll let this good martial nephew of yours know. Marshal Kuen seemed to be in a good mood. While activating the magic bottle, he said leisurely, "Could it be that you haven't heard of the looting mountain sealing magic array?" Sealing magic array? Xiao Hua heard the name and understood. He sneered. Could it be that the earth attribute of the mountain is used to create a powerful restriction that imprisons the bodies of the people of the devil realm? Oh? Marshal Kuen's face flashed with a strange color. He said in disbelief, "You actually know about this array? You are really, as she said, dabbling in a wide range of things. Your magic power is close to the late foundation establishment stage. In addition, your divine strength is comparable to a gold core stage cultivator." Who? Xiao Hua's heart trembled as he asked. Who? Why should this old man tell you? Marshal Kuen sneered. After you die, you can ask in the underworld. With that, Marshal Kuen waved his hand and the golden flame flew into the air. It suddenly lit up the entire valley. The spiritual energy in the valley was like a waterfall as it poured into the flame from all directions. Split. Marshal Kuen's body froze in midair. With a point of his finger, the flame split in the middle with a loud bang and turned into 6 different hexagons hanging in the air. It seemed to be compatible with the entire formation. The aura of the flame itself was terrifying, and when it was mixed with the aura of the array, the entire might press down on Xiao Hua from all directions. How was this dealing with a mid-foundation establishment cultivator? Even if it was to kill a golden core cultivator, this formation was more than enough. Go. For the time being, Xiao Hua didn't have a suitable magic treasure in his hands, so he could only wave the Sunleaf fan. As the Sunleaf fan danced, 6 fire dragons rushed towards the 6 flames. Seeing the huge fire dragons rushing out, Marshal Kuen didn't even blink. He even sneered. Since you saw this old man use this kind of magic, don't you know that this old man is of the fire attribute? This kind of ordinary fire. Sure enough, when the 6 fire dragons rushed into the flame only swayed slightly and all the flames were sucked into it without any ripples. It seems that you have already figured out this, Xiao. Xiao Hua sighed. He clapped his hand and the sun leaf fan was stored in the space. Where is your phoenix dharma body? Marshal Kuen stood there quietly, about 10 zhang away from Xiao Hua. He asked with a smile, "This old man still wants to see how this innate true fire will turn your phoenix dharma body into a roasted chicken. Who is that person? You only need to tell this Xiao, and this Xiao will immediately release his dharma body." Xiao Hua estimated the distance between him and Marshal Kuen and calmly replied, "Actually, there is no harm in telling you." Marshal Kuen laughed. "According to this old man's knowledge, it is absolutely impossible for you to escape from this 6-ding mountain sealing magic array. However, this old man has always been careful. Until you die, I will never tell you." Then Marshal Kuen tilted his head again. "Don't tell me. You think you can escape from this array?" "Yes, this young master wants to let you know. You dared to scheme against this young master and even talk to this young master for so long. This is definitely the greatest sorrow in your life. How can this old man's strength be guessed by you?" Xiao Hua waved his hand and the wishful staff appeared in his hand. As he expected, the wishful staff was not restricted by the array at all. You are a bit strange." Marshal Kuen saw the wishful staff in Xiao Hua's hand and sneered. "Isn't this old man talking to you to stall for time? Look at these 6 lanterns." While speaking, Marshal Kuen grasped his hand, and the 6 spells hit the flames. The flames suddenly transformed and 6 lampstands appeared in midair. Each lampstand emitted the same golden brilliance. As the brilliance sprinkled down, the lampstands drew a mysterious arc in midair and constantly rotated. At the same time, Flames like lanterns flew out from the lampstands. The flames emitted a golden light. Although they absorbed the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, they did not expand. The hot temperature burned the void. Xiaohua felt the scorching fire. He wanted to release the Buddha relic and water bottle, but looking at the star-like flames and Marshal Kuan, who was more than 10 feet away from him, his heart moved again. He waved the wishful staff in his hand, protecting himself so that not even a drop of water could leak out. Ha ha ha, why do you have the same idea as those devil bastards? Kuan Shuai's body stood there steadily, as if he didn't dare to move too much. His Fali surged, and he laughed again. If this Xiantian true fire can be sent flying by your demonic weapon, would it still be Xiantian true fire? You're really ignorant. Marshal Kuan's smile was full of mockery, but it was also a kind of stability and a feeling of relief. Who knew that when more than a dozen flames fell in front of Xiaohua, they were hit by Xiaohua's wishful staff? As if they were real things, Marshal Kuan's smile froze on his face. This is impossible. Marshal Kuan murmured. Yes, this is innate true fire. Whenever it comes into contact with a magic weapon, and other things, it will burn. There is absolutely no exception, unless the opponent has special means to not let this innate true fire touch him. Although Marshal Kuan was very confused, a sinister smile appeared on his face. Under the urging of his magic power, the 6 candlesticks on the candlesticks scattered like flowers by a celestial maiden. This old man doesn't believe that you can remain untouched in the sea of fire. Xiaohua was secretly happy. This wishful staff is really famous. It can really hit these flames. However, there are still some problems. After all, there are still magic weapons in the wishful staff. This wishful staff is still stained with some small flames. Moreover, this 6-ding mountain ceiling magic array is the key. It's really too powerful. I'm afraid I won't be able to hold on for long. Xiaohua seemed to be waving the wishful staff very easily, but in fact, only he knew that every time he waved it, the pressure on his body increased a little. It was as if in this big array, only by remaining still could this pressure be eliminated. However, Xiaohua had no other way. He could only try his best to wave the wishful staff. Although it was not as cool as before, under the magic of the heavenly staff technique, the flames were blocked a few feet away from Xiaohua and could not get close to him. However, in the time it took to eat a meal, Xiaohua became more and more unable to hold on. The entire valley had been completely covered by the flames. Xiaohua's arms were also very tired. Since he started cultivating, he had never been so tired. Obviously, there were flaws in the heavenly staff technique. Occasionally, some flames passed through the wishful staff and hit Xiaohua's side. Xiaohua struggled to dodge, but when the flames fell to the ground, they immediately burned. There were too many flames passing through, and Xiaohua had no place to stand. He dodged and dodged, quite embarrassed. Fortunately, during this time, Kuan Shuai did not cast any other spells. He only urged the innate true fire, as if he was not free to come and go in this battle. Seeing that the flames had spread under Xiaohua's feet, and there was no place for him to move, Kuan Shuai laughed. This old man wants to see what is so special about your so-called hidden fire physique. Is that so? Xiaohua's arms really had no strength. His eyes narrowed slightly, and he sneered. Then this young master will let you see. With that, Xiaohua put away the wishful staff and let the flames fall from the sky. When the flames were close to his body, his hand pinched the fire escape technique, and his figure disappeared in a flash. This. Seeing Xiaohua disappear in the innate true fire, Kuan Shuai's eyes almost fell out. How is this possible? This is the innate true fire. Even if, at this moment, there was a fluctuation of spiritual power in the flames that had already spread over his feet. Xiaohua's figure appeared in the flames, and the wishful staff was waved again, strangely hitting Kuan Shuai's leg. 5 elements escape technique? This is impossible. Kuan Shuai knew that the 5 elements escape technique was known to be able to escape in the 5 elements. It should be able to escape in the flames, but at that time, it was an ordinary flame, an innate true fire. Who would dare to escape in it? Xiaohua waved the wishful staff, and there was only a trace of strength left in his arm. He had endured for so long, waiting for the true fire to fill the valley. Only then would he have the opportunity to use the fire escape technique to rush into the air and have the opportunity to get close to Kuan Shui. Although when he was escaping within the primordial fire just now, not only was his escape technique extremely slow, it was also affected by the formation. Moreover, the light protecting his body was also on the verge of collapse and could be shattered by the special characteristics of the primordial fire at any time. But after all, he still succeeded. This last bit of strength was most likely the last straw for him to escape. Seeing that Kuan Shui was caught off guard and Xiaohua hit Kuan Shui's leg with the wishful staff, Xiaohua could not help but be overjoyed. -8. Chapter 2491. However, when the wishful steel staff fell on Marshal Kuan's legs, the brilliance on Marshal Kuan's legs flickered, and the brilliance shattered like a firefly. Marshal Kuan's figure standing there was actually a phantom. Immediately afterward, Marshal Kuan's laughter sounded in the distance. Ha ha ha. Sure enough, it's Xiaohua. Sure enough, you're a disciple of the 10,000 Thunder Valley. This old man still underestimated you. Xiaohua's face was extremely ugly. Just as he was about to use the wind escape technique to chase after Marshal Kuan, his other hand waved, and he was about to use the soaring dragon shears that he didn't dare to take out. Rumble. A huge sound rang around Xiaohua. Xiaohua only felt that the scene around him was like floating clouds. Countless flying feather beasts, swimming fish monsters, and monsters emerged from all directions and rushed toward Xiaohua. Xiaohua was shocked. His divine sense swept over and immediately understood that he had fallen into Marshal Kuan's trap. The space around him was rapidly shrinking. In the middle of the valley, a magic treasure that was flat like a spindle appeared in the air above the array. There were strange runes flowing around it. This magic treasure was dozens of feet in size, and it occupied half of the sky above the array. But the strangest thing was that this spindle-like magic treasure was divided into two parts. In the middle, there was a saw-like gap. The saw-like gap flickered with light and was obviously extremely sharp. Xiaohua was naturally on one of them, and the other was actually Marshal Kuan. Marshal Kuan had set up such a trap, and under his deliberate planning, he actually wanted to cover himself and Xiaohua together in this magic treasure. After the magic treasure shrank to the size of several feet, it stopped shrinking. Then the whole magic treasure emitted a strange blue brilliance. In this brilliance, countless runes swayed. As the brilliance overflowed, the flying feather beasts and other strange patterns that Xiaohua saw moved as if they were alive. Buzz. When all the flying feather beasts circled around the magic treasure, the whole magic treasure began to shake. Damn it! Xiaohua held the wishful steel staff in his hand and looked at the changing scenery in the sky with puzzlement. When the magic treasure shook, the space where he was collapsed as if the sky was falling and the earth was splitting. A strange mountain range, shaped like a sawtooth, appeared out of thin air like a natural moat and pressed toward Xiaohua. The sawtooth flashed with a cold light and was incomparably sharp. A destructive aura emanated from the sawtooth. Not good. Xiaohua was really frightened. He had no doubt that as long as the giant thorn pierced him, even his tempered body would absolutely not be able to resist. He would definitely be pierced into meat paste. Marshal Kuan's plan was to push Xiaohua into the dead. Just as he was trying his best to swing the staff, a powerful suction force was born from the magic weapon. The true essence in Xiaohua's body flowed rapidly, and all the magical power rushed out of his body uncontrollably. It was thrown toward the sky. Earth-splitting earth split. As all of Xiaohua's dermic powers rushed out, the collapse in the space Xiaohua was in immediately stopped. Instead, it strangely retreated and rapidly returned to its original state. The destructive sawtooth rapidly retreated, and it was much faster than when it appeared just now. Just when Xiaohua was puzzled, Marshal Kuan's scream came from the sky. This is impossible. Even if your strength is comparable to a gold core, your magic power, how can it be compared to this old man? Of course, this was Marshal Kuan's last voice. Then Xiao Hua saw a fierce brilliance flashing from the place where the sawtooth disappeared, like a strong sun. He couldn't help but squint his eyes. At the same time, the scene around Xiao Hua changed again. The flying feather beasts that had disappeared before appeared again. But these flying feather beasts did not wander for a moment, and the magic power that had rushed out of Xiao Hua's body rushed back into his body. After getting all the flying feather beasts, they gradually enlarged and gradually dimmed. Xiao Hua only heard a kacha sound and saw fire in front of him. In this fire, a spindle-shaped magic treasure floated quietly in the air, and on the other side of the magic treasure, Marshal Kuen's corpse was already dead. As Marshal Kuen's corpse flashed out of the magic treasure, the Xiantian true fire that had been wreaking havoc in the formation was swept away and absorbed into the 6 candlesticks. The 6 candlesticks shook less and gathered together again, turning into a golden magic bottle that landed in front of Marshal Kuen's corpse. What's going on? Xiao Hua raised his hand and scratched his head inexplicably. At this time, without Marshal Kuen presiding over the formation, the restriction had been greatly reduced. Xiao Hua didn't even have the strength to scratch his head, but now he was relaxed again. However, Marshal Kuen's death was obvious. Although Xiao Hua couldn't make sense of it, he still waved his hand and the golden magic bottle fell into his hand. With another wave, Marshal Kuen's corpse also floated over. Xiao Hua pulled with his hand and took the storage pouch on the corpse. Then, he searched the corpse's chest. Sure enough, there was a hexagonal magic tablet. Then, Xiao Hua stood quietly in the air and took out a jade slip from the storage pouch. After looking at it for a long time, he pointed with his hand and sent a strand of magic power into the magic tablet. 6 strange fluctuations appeared at the 6 corners of the magic tablet and rushed to the 6 corners of the formation. Rumble, rumble, rumble. It was as if someone was resisting a mountain. Along with this vibration, the pressure on Xiao Hua's body gradually weakened. When the vibration ended, all the pressure disappeared, and the 6 talismans of different colors flew in front of Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua moved his arms and legs and felt abnormally relaxed. He could almost fly dozens of feet in an instant. The 6 Kings Ceiling Mountain Formation. This formation talisman is actually made of talismans. Marshal Kuen really put in a lot of effort in order to trip me up. Xiao Hua laughed mischievously and stored the formation plate and talisman into the space. Then, Xiao Hua landed on the ground and put away the magic wand. Finally, he waved his hand and took the blue magic treasure that looked like a spindle. Tiske, what kind of magic treasure is this? Xiao Hua looked at it strangely. From what Marshal Kuen said, he thought that my magic power was at most at the late stage of foundation establishment. That's why he used this magic treasure. Who knew that my magic power wasn't something that a middle-stage gold core cultivator like him could compare to? Instead, he went for wool and came home shorn, and was killed by this magic treasure. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua stored this strange magic treasure into the space. He waved his hand and was about to take out the jade slip from the storage pouch to check, however. Just as his hand touched the storage pouch, his heart suddenly jumped violently. Oh? Xiao Hua was startled, but his lowered head didn't change in the slightest. His eyes turned slightly, and he released his Buddhist sense. His Buddhist sense covered the entire valley, and even extended for several li. Aside from the whistling of the cold wind, he didn't see anything special. Strange. Xiao Hua waved his hand and casually took out a jade slip. He placed it in his left hand and slowly checked it. So that's how it is. Xiao Hua's eyes flashed with a cold light. Then, Xiao Hua put away the jade slip and flicked his hand. A spark flew out and landed on Marshal Kuen's corpse. The orange flame slowly swallowed the corpse, and only after half a cup of tea's time did it burn the corpse. When the corpse disappeared, a dim gold core the size of a thumb appeared in the flame. Marshal Uncle Kuen, I really can't imagine why you would do such a vicious thing to me. Xiao Hua flew into the air and waved his hand to store the jade slip into the space. He looked at the messy valley and smiled bitterly. However, since Marshal Uncle has done it, don't blame me for being ruthless. Now that you're buried in Huan country, you're also a meritorious subject of my Imperial Thunder Sect. This meritorious service will be left to your descendants. This gold core, this little one will be disrespectful." After saying that, Xiaohua seemed to be exhausted. After flying for a few feet, he hesitated again. He looked up in the direction of the Seven Extremes Mountains and frowned. How can there be a war in the Seven Extremes Mountains? This is just Marshal Kuen's vicious plan. Why would I go to the Seven Extremes Mountains? I'd better turn back. While speaking, Xiaohua turned around again and flew back. But after flying for a few dozen feet, when he passed by a foothill, Xiaohua suddenly stretched out his hand and took out the wishful steel staff. He threw it at a place he had just passed and shouted, "You're courting death." But at the place where Xiaohua's wishful steel staff hit, a few rays of brilliance suddenly flashed in midair. The human figure of a cultivator flashed out of the void. The cultivator's face had a strange shock. Who else could it be but Li Chengxiu of Xianlu sect? "Ah, how come it's you?" Seeing Li Chengxiu's figure appear, Xiaohua was also surprised. He also looked at Li Chengxiu in surprise. He tried his best to urge his spiritual power to avoid Xiaohua's wishful steel staff. "You're going to die too." Of course, Xiaohua's astonishment only lasted for a moment. He definitely wouldn't let anyone know that he was the one who killed Marshal Kuen, especially Li Chengxiu, who was bent on taking his life. Xiaohua's sneak attack was absolutely successful. He took advantage of Li Chengxiu's side to suddenly turn around and seize the opportunity. How could he be merciful? Li Chengxiu was a cultivator of the late gold core stage. It was rare to have such a good opportunity to get close. If Xiaohua couldn't kill him at this time, the trouble in the future would be big. Sure enough, although Li Chengxiu's invisible amulet had some origin, under Xiaohua's continuous attacks in a short period of time, some of its brilliance had dimmed. Li Chengxiu urged his flying technique to escape, but no matter what, he couldn't be faster than Xiaohua's wind escape technique. "Xiaohua, little bastard. This old man originally wanted to let you live. Who knew that you could actually see through this old man?" Li Chengxiu's face was gloomy. He gnashed his teeth and said fiercely. Then, when Xiaohua's stick hit the light protecting his body, Li Chengxiu ignored his injury and clapped his hand. A palm-sized pipa appeared in his hand. With a flick of his thumb, the sound of a golden drum rang out from the pipa and directly pierced Xiaohua's ears. -8. Chapter 2492. Seeing his full strength hit Li Chengxiu's body, the defensive brilliance only flickered slightly, and his strength was neutralized. Xiaohua knew that the origin of this invisibility amulet was extraordinary. When Li Chengxiu urged his magic weapon, the sound of the golden drum entered his ears. Xiaohua's eyes suddenly became dizzy, as if a golden needle had pierced his brain. The wishful steel staff in his hand swayed, and there was a tendency that he could not hold it. Xiaohua was shocked by Li Chengxiu's means and did not dare to neglect. He held the wishful steel staff in one hand and took out the soul-absorbing bell in the other. At the same time, he also took out the toad soul tool. The soul strands flew out from the Dharma eye and rushed into the soul tool. Dang! The sound was like a great bell. That sound rushed into Li Chengxiu's defensive brilliance. Li Chengxiu originally wanted to use his magic power to play the pipa again, but that extremely loud sound actually broke through his defense and rushed straight into his mind. A look of confusion appeared on his face. Fortunately, at this critical moment, the defensive brilliance overflowed with extraordinary splendor, and Li Chengxiu's pipa also emitted a babbling sound. Li Chengxiu's sluggish eyes showed signs of life. "Io, what a pity," Xiaohua secretly said, as he urged his soul thread again and forced himself to attack again. Dang! At this moment, Li Chengxiu's face revealed a horrified expression. He urged the spiritual power in his hand. With a clang sound, the two kinds of sounds collided with each other, producing a crackling, explosive sound. Countless extremely small airwaves were generated between the two of them, and the two of them were pushed back several feet. "Io, not good." Xiaohua did not expect such a result. While he was complaining in his heart, he waved his hand and the soaring dragon shears suddenly flew out. A golden light flashed in the air, and a kacha sound was heard. Several cracks appeared on Li Chengxiu's defensive brilliance. See, isn't this amulet too powerful? Xiao Hua was once again flabbergasted. He was very clear that even the flying sword of an illusory sword cultivator would have several cracks under the full force of the soaring dragon shears. Li Chengxiu's protective talisman actually had several cracks on it. Its degree of toughness was comparable to an illusory sword. Who would have thought that Li Chengxiu was even more shocked? He was hiding at the foot of the mountain and saw the whole process of Xiao Hua killing Marshal Kuan. He was shocked by Xiao Hua's methods and was already hesitating whether to kill Xiao Hua by surprise. But he didn't expect Xiao Hua to turn around and directly see through his hiding place. His invisibility talisman was not an ordinary talisman. He had just obtained it from one of his teachers. Even in his dreams, he would never have thought that Xiao Hua's magic tool would actually be able to break it. And what shocked Li Chengxiu the most was that Xiao Hua's method of attacking him was very different from the method he used to kill Marshal Kuan. He simply didn't know how many methods Xiao Hua had. You. Who are you? How could your magic power be more profound than Marshal Kuan's? You. Don't tell me you're really. Li Chengxiu's eyes widened. He clenched his teeth and squeezed out these few words from between his teeth. Of course it's me. Who else could it be? Why would Xiao Hua care about him? Seeing that the brilliance that was cracked by his soaring dragon scissors was actually showing signs of gradually healing, and Li Chengxiu's figure was also showing signs of blurring, Xiao Hua also clenched his teeth and waved his hand. The sword pouch was in his hand. Quick! Xiao Hua's hand formed a sword seal. 7 flying swords from the sword pouch rushed into the air. The killing intent swept away all the snow in the mountain valley. You. It was actually you who assassinated Tu Hong. Li Chengxiu's eyes revealed a flash of understanding. Damn it. I only had this thought that flashed through my mind that day. I didn't think that it was really you who entered. Just as Li Chengxiu was in a daze, the 7 flying swords crossed in the air and formed a 7-star great array, firmly controlling Li Chengxiu within the sword array. Seeing that the 7-star great array was instantly formed, Xiao Hua's heart slightly relaxed. Hee, Tu Hong was the first, and you're the second. Xiao Hua sneered. Didn't you always want to kill me? Now, I want to see how you're going to do it. Oh, so you already knew. Li Chengxiu looked at the brilliance that had already healed a little and sneered. It was this old man who was stupid. You're old. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and waved his hand. Within the 7-star sword great array, the 7 flying swords trembled slightly and emitted a sword cry. A powerful restrictive force pressed down on Li Chengxiu's protective brilliance. The brilliance flickered along with the sword cry, and the cracks gradually expanded. I want to ask you a question. Li Chengxiu couldn't hold back his curiosity and whispered, Don't worry, fellow Taoist Li. I'm the same as Marshal Kuan. I definitely won't say a word. Xiao Hua's hand moved again, and the 7 flying swords actually began to rotate like 7 stars dancing in the night sky. The restrictive force became even stronger. Are you a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect? Are you a middle-stage Foundation establishment cultivator? Li Chengxiu still asked the question. Li Chengxiu's question was quite strange. Xiao Hua was stunned and sneered. Of course, I'm a cultivator of the Imperial Thunder Sect. However, as for whether I'm a Foundation establishment cultivator or not, Xiao Hua's eyes turned, and he patted his forehead and used a secret technique to deceive everyone. Xiao Hua's cultivation rushed from the peak of the early-stage Foundation establishment to the middle-stage Foundation establishment, and then to the late-stage Foundation establishment. Moreover, the pressure didn't stop at all. It went all the way from the early-stage gold core to the middle-stage gold core, and then stopped at the peak of the middle-stage gold core. You really are a middle-stage gold core cultivator. Li Chengxiu sighed. No wonder Marshal Kuan died in the Forbidden Law record. I was also almost deceived by you. If that's the case, then you should. At this point, Li Chengxiu's eyes flashed with a hint of joy. Oh, Forbidden Law record? Xiao Hua wrinkled his brows and withdrew the fake pressure of the secret technique. However, when he heard the last half of Li Chengxiu's sentence and the joy in Li Chengxiu's eyes, he felt something was wrong. Go. Xiao Hua opened his mouth, and the Dream Executioner transformed into 64 azure and red sword lights that rushed into the sword formation. Hiss! Li Chengxiu's heart palpitated for no reason. It was as if he was a stranger in front of him. Li Chengxiu was so frightened that he hastily urged the secret technique. His entire body flashed with brilliance, and the faint sound of heavenly music echoed in his mind. Only then did he expel that fear. That day, I'm afraid Tu Hong was helpless in front of the piercing swords because of this. Li Chengxiu thought with lingering fear. However, looking at the 64 azure and red sword lights that pierced with absolute sharpness, and the 7 flying swords that were revolving like stars, the power of confinement within was like a millstone being squeezed. Within the brilliance, a faint ka-ka sound could be heard. Xiaohua is actually a middle-stage gold core cultivator, and he has so many tricks up his sleeves. Li Chengxiu's eyes narrowed. He knew that today was the day he had to make a choice. He concealed himself so deeply. I'm afraid it's really like what he said. Even he doesn't have much certainty. I can only do this. Thinking this, Li Chengxiu clenched his teeth and took out a spirit talisman from his storage pouch. He dripped a drop of blood essence into it, and then sneered as he urged his magic power. The spirit talisman received the blood essence and suddenly emitted a resplendent brilliance like a rising sun. As soon as this brilliance appeared, a powerful suction force was born from the spirit talisman. The gold core in Li Chengxiu's body surged, urging his true essence to circulate, and all the magic power in his body poured into it. Wang! There was a loud sound like millions of bees and flies flapping their wings. Within the entire valley, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within several li converged towards this brilliance. After a series of hurricanes blew past, within the brilliance, a large blood-red hand appeared from within the spirit talisman. Ah! Xiaohua had seen this large hand several times. Naturally, he was very familiar with it. This was one of the divine abilities of a nascent soul cultivator. Xiaohua couldn't help but cry out in alarm. What else was there to say? This spirit talisman was the life-saving means that Li Chengxiu obtained from the sect leader of the Utopia faction when he was on duty at the conference hall. As soon as the blood-red hand formed, it immediately produced a powerful force from its 5 fingers. This force not only tore apart the imprisonment force of the 7 stars Great Array, but also completely disrupted the 7 stars Great Array. The 7 illusory swords let out a mournful cry in mid-air. Moreover, as the large hand shook slightly, the 64 sword lights of the Dream Executioner were suddenly crushed, revealing only the small green and red sword suspended in the large hand like a dead fish. It looked quite lonely. Hiss! Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. The imprisonment force of this large hand is too powerful, right? Xiaohua hurriedly urged the Dream Executioner. The Dream Executioner was like a panicked bird, struggling in the large hand, trying its best to break free from the imprisonment. Not only that, the large hand tore apart the 7 stars Great Array and didn't stop at all. It once again covered the direction of Xiaohua. Damn it! Feeling the irresistible imprisonment force falling from the sky, Xiaohua's eyes turned wildly. He waved the wishful staff in his hand, wanting to fight against the nascent soul's hand. But his heart moved, and with a wave of his hand, dozens of refined fire talismans were scattered. Rumble, 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 rumble. A series of earth-shattering explosions rang out, and the entire valley was dyed red. What kind of yellow talisman is this? Li Chengxiu obviously didn't see Xiaohua's jade talisman clearly. He didn't care about Xiaohua's jade talisman at all. He only wanted to urge the nascent soul's hand to grab Xiaohua to death. However, when he saw an explosion that he had never seen before, the imprisonment force of the nascent soul's hand exploded, and even some parts of the nascent soul's hand cracked, he exclaimed. However, he only had time to let out a cry of surprise before Xiaohua actually took out a dozen more fire talismans from the space. Ah, this is a jade talisman. How could he have a jade talisman? Li Chengxiu was shocked. And it's actually a fireball jade talisman. Xiaohua waved his hand without hesitation, and dozens of fire talismans were scattered again. He didn't look distressed at all, as if he still had a lot of them in his storage bag. And these dozens of fire talismans exploded, blocking the nascent soul's hand from moving further, making Li Chengxiu feel really stretched. -8.